Merrimack Conservation Commission. To my far left, we have Matt Kieran, my vice chair, Gage Perry. We have a bunch of Mikes. We have Mike visiting. We have Mike, who's now a full-time member, right? And we have Tom Mahon, so good. I think that's the full commission for tonight. Besides that, we're going to push out the number 2 item under appointments, the visit with GZA, and we'll meet with them at another night when we have more time.
Tentatively schedule it for the next regular scheduled meeting.
Right. So Lauren is not well tonight, and Tom Lehman is not able to make it because of his work schedule. So I have no other announcements. Anyone else have anything else they'd like to announce? Okay. Next on our agenda is public comment, but we'll jump, unless someone has something specific they want to just say before we get started, we'll jump right into the informational session. So can you all see? Do you want to move chairs? Do you want to make it easier? Okay. All right. So what I wanted to do was take a little bit of time and explain to you all a little bit about what it is we're planning on doing, and then answer any questions that you might have. With us at the far end of the table is Mike Powers. He's licensed herbicide applicator, as well as he is our forester and manages a lot of our forestry activities that we do here through the commission. So he's very familiar with Merrimack and the property in which we're planning on doing some work, as well as he can answer questions that are more specific about, what's the process and things like that. So I believe most of you got a letter that it kind of showed the area that we're thinking about doing some work. But before we get into that, let me kind of give you an overview of the situation. So we own, the town owns 10 Brookside Drive, which is got a stormwater outlet that runs towards Babusick Brook on it, as well as it's been mostly, it's been vacant ever since Brookside Drive was put in. We also own 18 Brookside Drive, which is at the corner of Brookside. If you're coming in from the lowest numbers, coming in from Brookside 1 and 2, you would round the easy bend past Ron Ketchy's house and then go a little bit further, and then when you hit the sharp, the 90-degree turn, we're right there on the corner. That property, 18 Brookside Drive, actually wraps around the backside of 16, 14, and 12 Brookside Drive. That's why that looks so large. I think most of you on the commission are familiar, but I've got a couple extra copies of the letter. So does that sound familiar to everyone? You know what I'm talking about? So the 18 Brookside Drive pretty much encompasses most of Babusick Brook, both banks of Babusick Brook, when it's flowing normally, as opposed to under a large storm situation or something like that. So what we found is on 10 Brookside Drive, there are a number of invasive species. In fact, if you drive by now, you'll see the most predominant one, which is Japanese knotweed. Some people refer to Japanese knotweed as bamboo, because when it dries, it kind of looks like long stalks of bamboo. You crack it open and it's hollow on the inside. Right now, I believe it's in white. It's flowering. There's white flowers all over it. Not big, but just little buds of flowers everywhere. The stalks can be a little red at times, almost look like rhubarb in some ways. Am I describing correctly, Mike?
Yeah,
Okay.
Pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Making it sound pretty. Yeah.
And oh, by the way, in case you're curious, some people actually eat Japanese knotweed. They mix it in and use it for menus and things like that. But here in New Hampshire, it has no enemies except for humans. The trouble is if you knock it down and you cut it into pieces, and any of those pieces get lodged in the ground, or certain pieces, all of a sudden you'll have a new plant. If some of them get knocked out and they end up in Babusick Brook, they'll travel down the brook, they'll find a new place to root, and they'll start a new clump. If you're driving down Joppa Road, you'll see numerous places of it. You'll see it over by Severance Bridge Road on Amherst Road, Severance Bridge on Amherst Road, and then lots of other places around town. It's very invasive. It gets right in, and it takes over, and it grows quite tall. We're also having trouble with burning bush. Burning bush at one time was a plant you could go to the nursery and purchase, and people used to love the nice bright red leaves that would turn out on it. In fact, most of the burning bush is probably getting ready to turn color here very shortly, if it hasn't already. So that burning bush we've seen mostly near our common shared boundary with 12 Brookside Drive. But lo and behold, actually in front of 18 Brookside Drive, further down by the deep end, there's quite a bit of burning bush down there as well. We've also seen multiflora rose. I know the woman who owns 8 Brookside Drive is experiencing issues with oriental bittersweet, autumn olive, honeysuckle, a number of other very invasives. If you may have noticed, she's been doing work on her property, taking the weeds out of the telephone pole that's on her property. If the main power lines and phone lines go to a single pole on her property near her driveway, and then they run the utilities into her house. They were so far, they had gone up the trees and the poles so much they were starting to pull on the wires and things like that. She has been fairly successful at cutting the plants and pulling most of them down, but she still has a huge issue with Japanese knotweed, same as we, but her problem wraps around into her backyard and is causing issues with her retaining wall, as well as it's growing under her porch, going through the deck boards on her back deck and porch area, through the stairs. It's actually dislodging the boards because it's that strong. So it's all over the place. We're seeing little clumps of Japanese knotweed closer to Babusick Brook. Essentially, it'll just take over, and how it got there is we're not sure, but we do know that over the many years, if you look, people have been putting yard waste and other waste on town property there. They've been doing it on 18 as well as 10 Brookside Drive. The trouble with that is if you happen to cut one of those nasty weeds and you drop it in there, you've now just moved the problem from your lawn to the town's property. And we're so close to the brook, it could become a neighbor's property further down the road. And when I put out the informational letter, I wanted to make sure folks knew further down Brookside Drive that we're having these issues, because if their property backs up to Babusick Brook like a lot of them do, I wanted to make sure folks were aware of what we're experiencing, just to see if they may be having their own issues as well. So when you put it all together, we really need to do something about it, and the best way to deal with it is to kill it. It's not necessarily to dig it up and remove it, because in the process of digging it up, you just can cause other issues and other problems, especially if you don't get it all. So what we're proposing to do, and we've also filed, since we're so close to water, we had to file a permit with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services in order to use the chemicals that we're planning on using out there. When it comes to the chemicals or the herbicides that we're planning on using, they're fairly well diluted. There's also another chemical in there that helps them to go into the roots of the plants and kill right at the plants. Mike here can kind of explain the process, but if people are concerned about chemicals being sprayed, when he applies, he wears gloves and boots and pants. There's no other really special long sleeve shirt, yeah. So it's not like he needs to wear a respirator. He's not going to look like a spaceman walking around out there. He will have a tank on his back, right?
Yes.
So.
I brought one with me today, but I wasn't sure if I should lug it in here.
Yeah.
But there's one out my truck. I could always go grab it if anyone wants to see it.
Yeah. So really what I wanted to invite all of you down here was to, one, answer all your questions. We're planning on actually doing this activity later in September or in the next week or two, right? Because we're already halfway into the month anyways. Mike is planning on applying as close to the roots as possible, or as many of the plants as possible. But because there's so much, he's going to be doing fairly significant amount of spraying in that area of 10 Brookside Drive, correct?
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
I want to put words in your mouth. So.
Yeah, no, it's a foliar application, so you have to. You're not so much applying the herbicide to roots. You actually don't want the herbicide really hitting the ground,
Okay.
or you want to minimize that as much as possible. You're going to get some drippage, but you're actually trying to hit the foliage,
Okay.
and the chemicals get absorbed into the plant through the foliage, and then translocate through the plant down into the root systems and kill the plant. And whenever we spray, we usually try to do it late in the summertime, because if you try to spray towards the beginning of the summer or late spring or something like that, all of the plants concentrating on taking water and nutrients from the soil and bringing it up into the plant and into the foliage, whereas this time of the year, the plants are starting to store nutrients in their root system. So everything's starting to move down the plant and into the root systems, and you really need to kill the roots in order to take care of the problem.
Mhm.
If you spray early in the summer, you may just basically kill the foliage, kill the leaves, but the root system may stay alive. So that's why we spray late in the summer, early fall.
So our thought is that we may actually come back again next spring, or, sometime next year and take care of what we don't get this year.
Yeah, whenever you have a heavier infestation, there's always follow-up spraying that you need to do. You never get everything the first time around. There's always going to be smaller plants underneath the larger plants that don't get hit. There's always some sort of follow-up that you usually have to do on heavier infestations. If it's a very light infestation, a lot of times you can get it, the first time and do a pretty good job. But when it's as heavy as it is out there, it's a pretty good chance you'll have to do some sort of follow-up. But the follow-up application is never you don't use nearly as much material as the initial application.
I'm sorry, is the follow-up only something we can do yearly? I mean, when you spray it, what's the time between when you spray and we start to see some of this abate?
Yeah, it's usually, it's going to be at least 3 or 4 weeks before you really see the plant. The plant will start to yellow and wilt, and then eventually die. So you really won't see real noticeable or results until next spring. You'll see the plant starting to yellow and wilt and stuff in 3 or 4 weeks, but
What's the saying? In 3 or 4 weeks now, we're going to be beyond our time frame where it's really viable to spray again.
yeah, when you start, the leaves are going to start to change, within a few weeks here, and then you're going to have to, then you're going to get leaf drop and that sort of thing. And when that happens, then you're basically done spraying. You can usually spray invasive plants later because they tend to hold their leaves and foliage longer than native plants, which is why they're so difficult to. Their growing season tends to be longer than the natives, which is why they take over areas so readily. But yeah, your window is starting to close here as far as spraying. You've got another, maybe 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, and then you really should probably wait till next year.
Now, this is a contact spray that's designed for knotweed, or is it designed to kill plants?
No, it's a general kind of use spray that we use we call it our invasive species mix so we use it on basically every invasive species that we try to control, not just knotweed.
So when we hit a maple tree or an oak or something like that, is that also probably going to die?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you on a heavy infestation, if you have a small tree growing within where the knotweed is, the chances are very likely that small tree won't survive. The larger trees should be okay because the herbicide really needs to contact the foliage in order to penetrate the plant. So the smaller trees, there could be some non-target kill. We try to be as selective as we possibly can, but any native plants that are growing within that real heavy infestation may be damaged.
How long does the chemical stay in the ground, and how is it toxic to the water system?
Yeah. Sure. Well, there's 3 different herbicides that we use. The one that that we use the most of in the mix is the active ingredient is glyphosate, and that's the active ingredient that you find in products like Roundup. It has very, very low residual soil activity. So, in other words, I don't know the time off the top of my head, but it does not stay active in soil very long. It penetrates the plant. If you get some drippage, it hits the soil and it decomposes very, very quickly in the soil. Another herbicide that's in the mix is called Arsenal Powerline. The active ingredient in that is imazapyr, and that particular chemical will be a little bit more persistent in the soil. But we use very, very little of it in our mix. I think it's 0.25% of the makeup of the mix. So it's very, very small amounts of it. It's designed to stay active or stay in the soil to give you better control of that area. So that's what it's designed to do. But we use very, very little of that particular herbicide because it will stay in the soil for a little while. Doesn't move. It's not like if you spray here, it's gonna, in a few weeks or anything, it's gonna be over 100 feet away. It stays, it's gonna stay in that area unless you have some sort of catastrophic flooding or something that's gonna basically wash all that soil out of there. So it's not really gonna go anywhere, and there's very little of it that we use in the mix.
So once you apply, how long do we need to stay away from the area before we could actually walk through it again?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's called the reentry interval, and it's basically there's on the labels of each of the herbicides, it gives you a time frame of how long you can or how long you have to wait before you enter the site, and it's basically when the herbicide dries. I think I can't remember offhand which herbicide it was, but I think the longest reentry interval for one of the herbicides was about 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
And that's just to give it plenty of time to dry. I mean, if it's on a nice warm day with the sun out, usually it dries within about 20 minutes or so.
I see. Right, and once it's dry, that's it.
Yeah.
It's no longer.
No longer, and you can actually, it says on the label, you can actually enter the site as long as you're wearing your personal protective equipment, which is long pants, long sleeve shirt, and that sort of thing. But if somebody wanted to walk through the site in a short sleeve shirt, you definitely would want to wait until the material's dried on the plants before you re-enter that particular area.
And there's no issue with reconstituting if it gets wet?
No.
After like 3 or 4 hours and we get a rainstorm, something like that, it's...
No. It needs about 30 minutes or so,
okay.
and then it's basically going to do its thing. So we'll definitely time the spraying to the weather. If we're looking at high winds or a day that it looks like it's going to be raining or pouring rain, then we definitely won't spray. We'll make sure the day that we go out there is a good dry day, low winds, and we'll make sure the conditions are correct for spraying out there.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions here? Yep. Yeah. So did we get a sign-in sheet? Was there
No.
one in the packet? No.
You can just step right up here and just...
Kevin Fitzgerald, 18 Jakes.
Hold
Yeah.
on, we're gonna give you a sheet. You
Okay.
can jot all that stuff down.
That way, the person who does our minutes can get it all correct.
Thank you.
Couple of minor questions.
And the lights on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Wind.
When? Yeah.
What would be the minimum amount of wind that would postpone since we've been getting a lot of wind lately, in case you haven't noticed. Is it airborne and so forth?
If you have a little bit of windier conditions, we add to our mix what's called low drift. And what it does is it kind of binds up the solution and kind of prevents the particles or reduces drift. But if you're talking high winds, we won't spray. It's kind of hard to say without, I mean, if you're in a field, obviously you're going to be pretty exposed to wind in a neighborhood setting. I'm not exactly sure. I can't tell you, all right, at 10 or 15 or 20 miles per hour, you'd have to kind of be on site to see what kind of, which direction the wind's blowing and, what kind of gusts you have. So it's kind of hard to say, yeah, at, 20 miles per hour gusts, we're going to
Okay.
shut it down. But I could just tell you if it's, obviously if the wind is, looks like it's excessive and it looks like we'll get a lot of drift and potential to, that drift to go on off-site and onto other, non-target plants, we would shut it down.
Okay. The knotweed is flowering right now.
Yep.
I have bees. My bees are definitely on those knotweed, which means once they're sprayed, my bees will be picking up the spray. Because my bees, even though I'm probably about 1,000 feet away from these lots, bees travel up to 3 miles looking for pollen and so forth. The class of herbicides that you're using, are they proven to be bee-friendly?
I've got all the labels right in front of me here, and I'd really have to look through them to.
I would suggest we find that
Yeah.
out before we do apply it.
Yeah.
Because my neighbor, Jeff Roth, also has bees.
Okay.
So I know I have approximately 25,000 bees. Jeff probably has closer to 40,000.
Okay. And what was your address?
18 Jakes.
18. And how close do you feel like you are to the actual site?
Probably about 1,000 feet, if not less,
1,000 feet or less.
as the crow flies. Probably 500 as the crow flies.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So I'm
That
really
should be a major
I'm really
concern.
glad you're here to let us know that. That is a concern.
Will the land be posted to keep the adjoining people in the area from tramping through it once it's been sprayed?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
We drove a lot of hunters this, bow season has just started. So I know all the bow hunters out behind my house.
Is that land,
That's where they get into the woods.
is that land technically conservation land, and is it available for hunting?
It's town-owned land.
There's also conservation land behind my house, and some of it is available for hunting, so you need to know if there's gonna be hunters and so forth.
So it's not deeded as conservation land, it's town-owned land. It's
Alright.
under the town has asked the Conservation Commission to oversee the property,
Okay,
okay? Just to be technical, okay? Some of our properties are actually deeded for conservation and have limited restrictions. This being town-owned land has no specific restrictions against hunting.
okay, so it is open for hunting then.
It is.
Alright. That should be another major concern at this time, because hunting season just opened, bow hunting. Matter of fact, my son was over the other section of conservation land this morning, or this afternoon, rather. Bittersweet is also extremely invasive in the area. Will that be also targeted?
I think any invasives in the site are gonna be targeted. So if there is bittersweet, yeah, that will be targeted.
Okay. My main concern is the bees.
Yep.
I would hate to lose the hive, because the bees are bringing back the chemicals with them, and I know they're gonna be there. So, you need to check that.
Yep, definitely.
Okay? Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I forget anything.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Concerns? Sure, come on up.
I'm Pat Mercier. I live in Vermont, but my daughter lives at 26 Jakes Lane.
Okay.
And so one of my questions is, the neighboring properties are going to have some of these invasive plants on them. So is there going to be any sort of educational help for those people to get rid of them? If you get rid of them on this little spot, they're going to move back in pretty quickly if they are still on the adjoining areas. So it would be really lovely to have somebody come and identify the invasives and tell homeowners how to get rid of them.
Yeah, so, yeah, I do know that you can get help from the New Hampshire Cooperative Extension.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually have some people who will come out and will visit with you and explain different things.
So a neighborhood meeting could be set up probably and to invite them to come and help.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I know it's very hard to get rid of invasives, ever.
Yes, it's very difficult.
I mean, I am struggling at home with buckthorn right now that, you have to cut it down and drill holes into it and put pure Roundup down.
Yeah, yeah,
And, it just spreads very quickly.
right.
Oh, it's a great idea.
So,
Yeah, John Newt is the extension forester for Hillsborough County, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to come out. If you had a group of folks that you wanted to get together, he could talk to you about invasive plants, help you identify them. That's kind of what he does, and he's a good resource. You can, on your own property, you can use general use herbicides like a Roundup to control those plants. If you want to spray on somebody else's property, that's when you have to get a license, or you have to be a licensed applicator. And that's why I've been hired by the town of Merrimack, because I'm a licensed applicator. But you can spray,
Do
use
your
general
own.
use herbicides on your own property.
and so they are available to the general public.
Yeah, you can buy some concentrated forms of glyphosate. It's basically Roundup, probably at like a Tractor Supply or someplace like that. And you definitely have to follow the label instructions on it to mix it, and you can use that to try to help control the plants. But, John Newt could definitely help you, or give you some ideas and help you identify different plants, and,
Because you certainly don't want to destroy the native plants that are here.
No.
And I understand that probably when you spray, you're going to be getting rid of most of the understory.
We're going to try our best not to. But in all reality, when you have an infestation, I'm sure you've seen that knotweed along the road. When we spray that, anything that's native within that infestation probably won't make it. But the other way to look at it is it's not going to make it anyways. The knotweed's going to take it over that whole site, and basically no native trees or plants are really going to grow there anyway. So you probably will sacrifice a few native trees and plants, but the other option is they're really not going to make it anyways if you just let it go. So.
But you're also going to be opening it up for new growth to start, like little pines could grow. And
Sure. Yep.
Because they're not going to be
Yep. Definitely.
bothered by that.
They won't be competing with the invasives.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the idea.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You want me to sign this?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yep.
Just a quick question, the name of that gentleman you referred to, John Newt,
Yep.
who is he with?
The UNH Cooperative Extension.
Yeah.
He's a county extension forester.
Location is at
he-
UNH?
No, his office is in Goffstown, actually.
Yeah, there's a large, well, I shouldn't say a large group, but there's a core team in Goffstown that does a number of different things besides being a forester and whatever. They have they have other services they do there, so. And most of them are free, so. Any other questions, concerns? So exact date is not yet known. We're gonna, be based on weather.
Will we find out beforehand, and will we find out the answers to the question about the bees and so forth?
Yeah,
So-
I'm gonna look into that this week, and I'll have an answer for Tim by the end of the week.
Okay, so I'll need a best way to contact, to do a general mailing and stuff like that. I wasn't planning on spending taxpayer dollars to send out a bunch of more mailing, but if you think that's appropriate, if the commission thinks that's
Well,
appropriate,
are
we
you
can do that.
guys the only two with bees?
As far as I know, I'm not sure there's anyone else on Brookside that has bees.
Okay, is this the best number to contact you at?
I can give a phone number.
Yeah, if you could put a phone number or an email or something down there,
Yeah,
I'll put my cell number.
and we can certainly contact you directly and let you know the answer to that question.
yeah,
You can plug the hive for a day.
Yeah.
No bees can come or go. So we just gotta get the appropriate stuff to do that.
Boy, I don't think I'd want mad bees.
Oh, and they get mad.
Come to my yard. Come to my yard.
Well, so, I know nothing about that, so if we have a date set, how much time do you guys need prior to plug?
I'll be 24 hours.
Okay, and you can sufficiently,
The entrances and, there's stuff we'd have to do.
would you like to sit? We can grab
after
some
it gets
chairs.
cold, we'll all go in a hive
They're right
and
behind
plug it
Ken.
up.
okay,
Shut the top entrance and the bottom entrance down, they should be in there fine.
okay, because what we can obviously do is we'll keep informed of the schedule as best we can and get, at least 24 hours notice, weather depending.
Yeah.
So, okay, great, thank you.
Does the herbicides contain any of the new, not the GMOs, the nanonucleotides or whatever it is, the ones that everybody's under lawsuit for up in Canada?
I have no idea what that is.
There's a new class of,
It's a pesticide.
it's a pesticide.
It shouldn't be in a herbicide.
Okay, that answers that question then.
Yeah.
By the way, one of the pesticides, one I just mentioned, is under a lawsuit for the companies that manufacture it. They just got slapped with a $500 million lawsuit up in Canada. But that is a pesticide, thank you.
Do you know what was it being applied, what was the application that, are they controlling insects or?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah,
But it's totally devastating on bees.
yeah, I would imagine.
Do you know the exact name?
It's a broad spectrum general use pesticide. I don't know what it's used for, but.
If
Yeah,
you're interested, I can look it up. It's in a lot of the literature.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, that I was going to close out this part of our meeting. What I'd like to ask all of you, though, is if you happen to see any of your neighbors thinking that using our property is a great place to put their lawn waste, their branches, their trees, their grass clippings, or anything like that, please encourage them not to do that.
Is the land posted for that?
It's not posted for that, but it is, again, there is a town subdivision rule that will give you a fine if you're caught doing it. It's basically not your property, so people should be aware that they're doing things to someone that's not their property.
You may want to post it and say, do not
We've
dump
been-
your garbage
Yeah,
here.
we're considering that. I was just trying not to clutter the view with signs, especially signs that say don't do, the negative signs. But one of the other parcels that we own further down Brookside Drive, the town owns, is posted that way, so we might have to have other signs as well, so.
Has it worked?
I don't know. It's mostly Public Works folks manage that property, so I'm not sure. I don't see the same droppings and lawn clippings that I see. I don't see them on that parcel where I do see them on our other parcels, so. The downside of those things is even if there's no invasives in them. There could be fertilizers or pesticides or other things. And we're so close to Babusick Brook, as well as the stormwater system that runs through 10 Brookside Drive, that some of that could end up inside Babusick Brook. The other thing that you could happen is that as these things break down, the various nutrients in them also break down and enter the water system and go further down. It could cause issues for people further downstream. So that's why we're trying to get the word out and encourage people to let their neighbors know if they know that they're doing it, to say, please don't do it, because the last thing I want to do is to ask the town to fine anyone. But the other thing is we don't want to make life worse for people downstream. So, anything else?
Could I
Sure.
ask one last question? Now, this is public property.
Correct.
Do most of the public know that it's public property? Because it was a surprise to, my daughter
I
and neighbors.
don't know.
It was a surprise to me. I didn't know about it.
And what it's used for.
A lot of us, yeah.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah, see, the back lot, 18 Brookside, is simply to protect Babusick Brook, which is it's a specially recognized water body here in the state. 10 Brookside Drive was set aside simply because it has stormwater system for Walden Drive and other places that run there and then run into the wetland area. And that was all put in when the developments were done. We wouldn't normally do that anymore these days, but that's the way it was done at the time, so. I suspect only the folks that have been around long enough would know.
Yeah, we live right next to it.
Yeah.
And does the town manage it for
No.
way?
No, we
No.
try to keep it in its natural state, and also try to keep the stormwater drain systems open. That's the only regular management that happens out there, is to make sure the pipes aren't being blocked or obstructed, so.
So how do we really approach our neighbors and tell them to stop dumping? Because we don't, but all our neighbors do, right?
Yeah, well,
How do you broach that with a neighbor? I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of uncomfortable.
I can imagine it is, because we've all lived in neighborhoods, so. If you have a good relationship with them and you feel comfortable doing it, then go ahead.
Did other people, like across the street on Brookside Drive, receive notification of this issue?
Everyone on Brookside Drive from the beginning to 44 got the same letter, okay?
All right, so they're aware.
And there's some folks on Jake's Lane got the letter, some folks on Walden Drive got the letter as well. So I tried to get,
They're aware.
they're all aware of this meeting, okay? And the meeting, I think the letter, did it speak to?
No.
Yes, it did speak to inappropriate use of property for disposing of yard waste clippings and stuff like that. So you could say technically everyone's now aware. Yep. So I tried to be thorough in the letter.
Only if they think it's inappropriate to dispose of their
Right.
yard waste on their property.
Exactly, there's the term.
Right, oh yeah, yeah.
I've had to do that before.
Did you put
Ask
fine in
neighbors
there? Oh,
not to
really?
do that, yeah. And if you approach it the right way.
Delicately?
Yeah, it's not
With the right
too bad,
verbiage.
yeah.
Yeah,
What you may want to do in your letter, instead of saying it's inappropriate, say there is a fine if you get caught.
yeah.
That's true, that's more,
Why should you be the bad guy? Let the
that's
town
what I
be
mean,
the bad guy.
we
Thank you.
barely have a casual relationship with our neighbors as it is, we don't wanna be looking at,
Yeah.
developing a bad relationship with them.
Yeah.
So what,
Keep a copy of it, and then when the new neighbor moves in, give it to them,
yeah, that's true.
kind
Yeah.
of put it in the mailbox or.
Yeah, you'd kind of hope that people would understand if it's not their property, they shouldn't do it,
Right,
you know?
Unfortunately,
Because you'd expect someone to respect your property, and this is owned by everyone in the town, so I'm sure
Yeah,
not,
but if no one is maintaining it per se
well,
as a property,
Yeah.
then people are gonna say, oh, no one really owns it.
yeah,
And I didn't know it was owned by the town. I just dumped my grass clippings there.
honestly,
No,
most
I
people don't
don't.
think it's doing
Right.
any harm, but
yeah,
it is.
it is.
Mine go in my compost pile.
yeah, I thought it was just a nuisance, but it didn't even occur to me about the fertilizer and pesticide issue with the water right there.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that part of it.
But nobody else did either.
Yeah, from my understanding is, talking to some of the neighbors, some of your neighbors, it's been going on since the beginning of the neighborhood.
Yeah, we've been there, how many years, 15?
So, yeah, I met one couple who's been there since the houses were built,
Oh, wow.
so. And when it's just one person, it's probably not a big deal, but it seems to have grown because there's quite a lot of debris out there now. So,
Yeah.
And I would hate to have to ask Public Works to go in and remove it all, because that's also another expense that we all pay for. So, yeah. It's not an easy thing to do. If you, I mean, the other option is you could let us in the town, you could let the town know. But not everyone feels comfortable doing that either, so.
So I think I spoke to you.
Yeah.
I'm Kim.
Kim, okay.
I don't
Kim,
know.
I'm gonna need you to come closer to the mic if you're gonna talk more, though.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
I don't know if I missed the few minutes,
No.
about where actually the spraying's gonna begin and end.
Yeah.
Property-wise, because I'm the one with the
Right.
severe chemical issues.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so some of this is gonna repeat what some of you have heard, but you're welcome to stay, obviously.
Sorry.
In the letter, where we're having the most issues is at 10 Brookside Drive, and it's impacting the woman who lives at 8 Brookside Drive. We are also having some issues with burning bush at 18 Brookside Drive out by the road. And honestly, I believe some of that burning bush is on your property. Is this your husband? Yeah, or?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, what we had intended to do before I had received an email from you is we were intended to try and go after the burning bush at 18 Brookside Drive, and then concentrate most of our activities on 10 Brookside, which goes from the road to the beginning of the the brook. And it's basically a square or rectangular lot, and concentrate in there. Most of the invasives are actually closer to the road. There are a few that are further closer to the water, right?
Yes.
Right. So after discussing with you, and I was going to bring this up with the commission when we were wrapping this all up, is Kim has spoken about the fact that she has sensitivities to chemicals and things like that.
Extreme. I have genetic defects that do not allow me to detox from anything. Even if someone was wearing perfume, I'd have to leave. I get asthma. And even the smallest, lowest risk, products, even though it's an herbicide, not a pesticide, I would probably react to that. And it can be life-threatening for me as far as my reactions go to things. So I had spoken to Tim after I sent him the email, and they had proposed just staying kind of away from my property.
Right.
And just letting me know in advance when they would be spraying so I can stay inside. And I would appreciate that.
So my intent was to ask the commission if they felt comfortable knowing that we would limit our spraying to 10 Brookside Drive, as well as the backside, where our property on 18 wraps around the backside of 8 Brookside Drive. So basically, in this area on the map that we all saw, and I can pass this around. Okay, you want to?
Is that,
Could I just take a look at that?
that's the highest
Yes.
area of concentration?
Right, so at 18 where it abuts the road, we have an issue with burning bush. But that is so close to her property that that we could introduce problems for her. So after speaking with the town manager and our assistant town manager, is that official now? They felt that it was best that we try to limit our spraying to the area of 10 Brookside Drive as
Who
well.
is now the acting town
Yeah.
manager.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I can give you a heads up in advance, so
Please.
you know.
Yeah.
When Mike here is going to be doing the application, he explained that that between all the chemicals, after approximately 4 hours, it's safe to go back into that area, and that when he applies wearing boots, pants, and long-sleeve shirts, and that's the only protective equipment he needs. So it's fairly benign to humans, normally.
Right, if you're not me.
Okay.
I'm the canary in the coal mine. I can't even go outside in the wintertime if my neighbors are burning wood. I can't walk my dog. If someone fertilizes their lawn, I react to it for over a month. I get asthma. If I even walk near the property, hundreds of feet away, it's really, really severe. I've got a really, really bad genes from my parents, obviously.
So where we're gonna be applying it to the foliage, we're concerned about wind, so he won't be applying it in a windy condition.
Okay, great.
So that should alleviate any of, or is most of the issues from it coming towards your property.
Right.
From where he's gonna be working,
Okay, great.
so, and that's acceptable, that
Yeah,
works?
that sounds good. I have a lot less anxiety. I mean, I tell you, when I got the letter, I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have a problem.
Mike, your plan, I'm assuming, is probably late morning to kind of start into the afternoon?
I would
For the most part.
imagine it shouldn't, if we're just gonna do 10 Brookside Drive, it really shouldn't take very long. I mean, I'm thinking a few hours at the most.
Is there any time that you're typically not at home? That might be a better timing for us to get in there to do that
Not,
work? Or-
I'm usually home early in the day, but I can just make sure I don't go out or try to walk my dog or anything.
What was your address? What was the?
18 Brookside.
18.
Oh, 16.
16, okay.
Sorry.
So 16, yeah.
That's the line. My brain's fried.
Yeah, I would most likely, I'd be there fairly, kind of first thing, 8 o'clock, something like that.
Yeah, that's fine. I can
Yeah.
just make sure I
Email
stay.
just for-
I do have an email for,
Because I guess, similar to the bees, we can kind of forewarn you as to when it's gonna happen, so.
Right,
You
that would
know.
be great.
Is there, I'm assuming there must be bus stops and stuff along in the neighborhood.
that's true, we probably wanna, so elementary school gets picked up when? Does anyone know for that neighborhood?
Rob?
Usually about 8 o'clock.
Yeah, right
O'clock?
around 8.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
And
so
everyone
probably,
Yeah, so they're the last bus of the morning then, I would assume, right? Because elementary starts last, correct?
So,
Yeah.
so we definitely wait until after 8 before we get started, so
Yeah.
till the kids are gone.
Kids are gone.
Yeah.
Right.
He'll be right behind you. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, let's run through the spray.
Yeah, like the mosquitoes when we were
Kind of look like
little.
Yeah, the
you kind of look like a
DDT sprayer,
Ghostbuster
yeah.
with that
Yeah.
thing on your back, so.
No.
I was just saying, you'd be quite an attractive
Yeah.
little.
Okay,
Used to play basketball in it in Vietnam, the DDT guys would come by.
Oh, God.
oh,
On the basketball court, this cloud would come through.
oof. All right, anything else, Cam?
No,
No?
thank you.
Okay, yep.
Thank you.
All right, so the last thing I wanted to bring up with you all in regards to this, which I put an agenda item for later in our meeting, but we ought to just take it up now, is the folks who live at 8 Brookside Drive. Because issues on our property are severely impacting them, or, vice versa, I'd like to, can we do something there?
We can, obviously, we would need the
Yeah.
permission from
So-
those folks.
So I spoke with those folks and our acting town manager, and the thought was, if the commission agrees, is that we ask you and her to come to an agreement as to what needs to be done on her property.
Okay.
What those services are, and that we as the commission, and you work out that arrangement simply because it keeps us out of the middle of it, and
Okay.
there's no mistranslation and stuff like that. Try to time it at the same time we do this one here. And then at the end of the day, the commission takes care of the cost of Mike's activities on that property, if that's something the commission would entertain doing.
We were,
So
ex-
moved.
we were expecting that to be roughly a couple hours. we
Yeah.
thought.
I would
Couple
think
hours,
so.
right.
It's the same property with the, going up the pole
This-
and all
the
that.
hu- The
Yeah.
property we visited, absolutely, yep, yep. That's 8 Brookside Drive. We'll be doing most of the work on her side and backyard where I outlined on there, so that way she no longer has the knotweed going through her deck and her steps and her retaining wall and all those kinds of
That's
issues.
bad.
It is bad, so,
And we think because 10 is downstream from 8, because the water's flowing.
yeah, I don't think it's coming in it came in from the water. I tromped up through there and saw, I didn't see anything on, I couldn't get across the stream because the bridges are out now. They used to be all the way in place, but the last one's gone, so, and I didn't want to wade through the stream, so. But I didn't find it further upstream when I went up behind 6 Brookside, heading towards Jake's, so. So I have a feeling it started by the road and is working its way towards the brook as opposed to, but I am not a professional, so.
it's
Yeah,
hard to say. I
it's
mean,
hard to say, right,
It
yeah.
could have come from further upstream and,
And, right, it just didn't latch on till it got to
Yeah,
us, yeah, yeah, with a high water condition or something, who knows, right, it's hard to say, so,
You made a motion?
Mm-hmm.
I'll second it.
okay, moved by Tom, seconded by Gage, that we cover the costs. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Alright.
So that passes 500, so I will, you and I can speak afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, and we can make that happen,
yeah, if you want to
Okay.
give me her contact
Yep.
information, I can get.
absolutely.
Yep.
So, we've already approved the rest of the activity that we're gonna do, so we don't need a further motion on this. Any other questions or thoughts? Last? Great, well, thank you very much for coming out, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
You folks all set with me, Tim, or?
Yes, right, yep,
Yeah, if you just want to email me her contact info
I
or.
can do all that, yep, yep. Yep, she's aware of this, so,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Yep.
Bees and chemical
I
sensitivity.
think you're next, so I'll let you set up. Yeah, get your version.
Pardon?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Shit.
Just wanted to make a couple copies small in case it did.
It's like a planning board agenda here.
Yes, it does, it looks like the planning board
I'll
tonight.
just pick them back up.
Yes, it is.
I've been waiting 5 years.
You're lucky it's only been 5.
Trust me, I know. I had my own firm back then.
Uh,
Not the case right now.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, just give a quick moment for folks to get back. You can put your firm name on there as opposed to address. So you know, the commission got most of the sheets of the plans, but not every one of them. Like,
Okay.
we don't look at lighting, so I don't have lighting.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna
No,
go through that
so-
stuff. I figured you kinda wanted
Right.
to stick to drainage and those things, so.
Drainage, water,
Simple on
you
that.
know, snow, fertilizer, that kind of stuff, yep. So if you just give us 1 minute for the other two members to come back, and then we'll get started.
Hey, no sidewalks.
No, there are now.
No,
See the planning board meeting last week?
no,
I'm on the town council. I used to be the planning board rep, and I
Okay.
started raising hell about sidewalks when I was a planning board rep.
Okay, yeah.
okay.
Ooh, that pretty.
However, since these are gonna be private roads,
Is Matt on his way, or are we
He-
gonna
he-
start? We got a long night. All right, I think we're all back. So, So just for the verbally, let us know who you are and where you're from.
So good evening, my name is Matt Peterson, with Hillside Design Group out of Merrimack, New Hampshire here, representing the Bowers Landing project. What I'll do is I'll give you an overview of the project. I'm not gonna go through our typical presentation of every plan, but the sheet in here, there's 39 sheets. As the chairman has made it clear, we don't need to go through every single one there, yeah?
Oh, no.
You have a question?
Sorry,
Okay.
nope.
Just so everybody understands, this is the next phase of the Harris Pond project that's out there. Right now, that sits out there, you got the Dunkin' Donuts at the beginning, and then you've got the garden-style apartments. Then there's some empty land that's gonna be more garden-style apartments there. Then there's townhouses. This was the next phase of the townhouses. The townhouse phase is allowed 122 units. This had 44 townhouse-type units proposed on it. It had just a circular roadway that kind of came in here and just made it circle all the way around with the units on the inside and the outside. Over the last few years, the client here has decided to change it up a little bit to bring this product. This will give them single-family units in the development on smaller type lots, a PUD. It allows them now to have the garden styles, the townhouses, and the single-family. It kind of really breaks it up nicely, and it allows them to offer different types of uses on the property. Over the last year, we've worked closely with the planning department to come up with the concept and the design that's in front of you. Again, originally, I had just taken the road design that was originally approved and changed the units from townhouses to the single-family. It was kind of blasé. It was just come in, and as I said, a loop came up and around, and the homes were all around those. That held the design that was kind of originally approved, but working at the time with Nancy and with Tim Thomas, we came up with something a little bit nicer, what we believe. Came with more of a community feel for each neighborhood now. Each phase has its own kind of cul-de-sac, an entity to it. So much so that the planning board approved it last week in one hearing, which was very unusual. I've been doing this about 19 years, and I don't think I'd come across that yet. So that was very nice. Obviously, condition approval is you guys' input, and our state permits and stuff like that that we have. So that's just the overview of the project. It's 36 acres is what this phase is. It makes its way all the way down to the road. Originally, the design had the stormwater drainage up in the back corner here, and it had a little bit down in the lower corner here. With the design that we were able to put together here, I mean, all the plans you have, and again, I wasn't gonna get into that, but we've shown topo and we've shown the wetlands. There's no wetland impacts. We had to have the wetlands rechecked this year because this was done about, I think it was '04 was the original flagging of the wetlands. So we had Cindy go back out of Stony Ridge, flag the wetlands. She also did a soil mapping for us because we have alteration of terrain permit on this project here, so we have to go water quality, not only volume, but the stormwater runoff as well. So what we were able to do is take the majority of the drainage that was over in this location and bring it to one central location down in here. The plan sheets that you guys have, and I hope you have sheets 8, in your set there is the
Sure.
grading plans, 7 and 8.
Yep.
We can start with 7. One of the things we tried to do is leave the buffer coming down Manchester Street and not put drainage out in this location here. It was one of the things we talked about with planning board back in February, possibly bringing it down in here, cutting the trees and using that. One of the things that I try to do as we're developing properties is leave it so that when you're driving down streets 20 years from now, you still have the same street viz if you can. By doing the drainage system on the other side, we're able to leave that viz from this side here so you won't see our development as you come down the road. This piece here is actually part of the circumventual highway piece, one that we do not believe is happening, well, not happening. So that's still another buffer to our property that's here as well. So drainage-wise, we have a closed drainage system within the roadway, collecting the majority of our runoff. You'll see catch basins located approximately station 750 or so. That brings the water down. And then if you turn to sheet 8, it brings it all the way down into this main system that's right here. One of the things we found during the design is if you go out there today, this design right here, because it was done and permitted through the AOT basically pre-2005, the regs, as you know, as a Conservation Commission, have changed drastically the last 5 to 6 years. No more just looking at the peak runoffs, but now looking at the volumes, now looking at the pre-treatments, that type of stuff. Well, this system right here had 2 catch basins, and this is what's existing. These units are all built, this road's all built, the drainage is all in. This was already built and done. Basically, 2 catch basins, pick up the runoff here, and they went to basically a 50-foot grass line swale. Met all the requirements back then, that's what we did. Well, because we're gonna put the drainage in location here, we felt it made sense. We picked up this drainage here now and put it in our sediment forebay. We've designed our sediment forebay to handle that as well. So now our system picks up the drainage, drops it into this sediment forebay, and then to an infiltration pond, and then out. The numbers that we're talking about for the 10 and the 25-year storm. Okay, where did I put my notes here? For the 10-year storm, what's going to go into this system here is about 22.1 CFS. What is coming out is 1.4. So again, we're trying to recharge the majority of the water into the ground on this system here, picking up runoff that was off of it, treating it, and dumping it into our infiltration and back into the ground that's there. So this system's been designed for the AOT. It's up at the state right now. We don't have permits yet from Ridgemock and those guys yet, but we've met all their requirements and submitted up there, and obviously we can't put a shovel in the ground until we have a permit. Finish that stuff yet. As
Excuse
for,
me.
Yep.
AOT is alteration of terrain.
Terrain, sorry.
Okay.
Yep. Somebody brought up, one of the changes the planning board brought back to us last week was to add sidewalks. So as part of the approval, it was to add sidewalks onto the development here. And then you guys have copies of the landscaping plan. I kind of gave you small 11 by 17s color ups. We have all our standard landscape notes on both the sheets, which would be on sheets 13 and sheets 39. The only thing I wanted to look for was applying of the herbicides, and it doesn't look like we added that note, so that would need to be added. I know you guys have a pretty specific one in Merrimack. I don't see that they put down the plans there. I'm gonna keep, yep,
No, go ahead.
all right, I'm gonna keep the presentation short. I mean, I know you guys got a busy night. If you guys have looked at or have specific questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. Kinda go
Right.
from there.
So there is a wetland on the backside of the property. You've got it shown in the color map, or there as well. I see that you're pretty much kept everything outside of the no disturb buffer.
Yes.
Are you planning on doing any plantings inside that no disturb buffer? It wasn't clear to me if you were gonna actually completely leave it no disturb, you might say.
The goal is to leave it completely no disturb. I just wanna make sure no plantings up there. Tree line to be held right where the.
Held right where it is, okay, all right. This is also a no salt, no de-icing compound area,
Yes.
correct? You do get into fertilizers, though. I think we need to take a look at sheet 37, actually. Like, my notes are right? Nope, not right. Must be 33. Yeah, 33. Yeah, so in the top, under materials number 3, you actually have a 10, 20, 20 fertilizer specified under materials. Our hope is to fertilizers to be low or no phosphate and slow release nitrogen. The number 20 in the middle is the phosphate number, which wouldn't really count as a low phosphate fertilizer since it's actually a greater concentration than the nitrogen. So we've been using standard language and asking folks to adopt low or no phosphate depending on the conditions and slow-release nitrogen. But our other recommendation is that test the soil. You know, if it says I don't need phosphate or I don't need nitrogen, then don't apply it.
Do you have a standard note that planning staff has?
No, so the standard note is typically low phosphate, slow release nitrogen, okay? But our recommendation to folks when they come see us is, follow what Cooperative Extension says and test your soil. You know, you might find you don't even need to apply it, and that's a savings all around, so.
And that's a big question with the, we actually have already on this project Homeowners Association set up.
Mhm.
Because there's already 48 existing, and that's one of the big issues that we've been working with them on the size of the clubhouse, from costs and stuff like that. So if there's a way they can save maintenance costs, if they don't have to do it, yeah, that makes sense to them too, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
We can do that.
the other thing under materials, if you go all the way to note 8, the last one, is it starts with the word hay, and hay is a bad word if you haven't heard that about Merrimack. So we prefer straw over hay. No matter how you let it cook and everything else, there's always seeds in there that germinate. And then you end up with hay somewhere else or other things. So if on that same sheet, you'll see under application rates, it talks about the rate of application of fertilizers. Again, that really should be test and determine what's the right thing to do.
Okay.
So, I'm kind of speaking, but I think you all agree, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Might also make sense, as suggested, as that we provide them with some language, or suggest that they have some standard language that they can hand out to people when they come in.
Yeah, well, right. So after our last discussion on fertilizers, we had said that we were going to be using, low phosphate, slow release nitrogen. But there are a few places in town where no phosphate is where we're going to ask for. In fact, I think I'm going to certainly suggest it to the commission later when we see another project that's before us tonight. So, but typically in areas here, yes, you're fairly close to a large aquifer and all that stuff, but you don't have. I don't think you really have the slopes and issues and what methods for that to make it all the way to those aquifers. So.
Right.
So that's why I settled back with low phosphate. And then the other comment is we all agreed on when we had our fertilizer discussion was to recommend folks test first.
Yeah.
Use the Cooperative Extension or someone else. You spend a little bit of money, but you can save yourself a lot of money over time. Snow storage is going to be in your parking areas, I assume?
No, we have areas shown on the site plan.
Mhm.
Some are behind the parking spaces. Planning board made it clear they don't want to see the parking spaces filled with it.
Okay.
So as some of the people said, last year was actually the first year they had to have some snow removed off-site by the entity, so we have that on the plans
Yeah.
accordingly
Okay.
and disposed of properly.
Right now, I didn't find those spots, but none of them are going to be dripping. I'm assuming that any runoff as it melts will stay on site, essentially.
The areas are pretty tiny. There's some areas here, some areas at the
There.
corners, up in
Okay.
here, up in this location here, but they're dotted lines that are on the
Yeah.
landscape and the site plans there. But they're gonna have to remove
Yeah.
if they have snow like they did last year.
Right. Yeah, I had to move snowbanks down and everything else on my own property, so couldn't even see to get out on the road. That's all I've come across. Anyone else seen anything in the plans or anything else?
No, that was it.
Yeah. So, all right. So I will draft those comments in regards to hay,
Okay.
not being hay but straw, as well as the low phosphate slow release, and pass that along.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Have a good night.
You too. did forward late to all of you the letter, the planning board recommendations for the Bowers Landing.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't anything in there that I thought was unusual that we haven't seen before, so I'll also forward the letter for this project as well. In case you want to refer to it, I have a hard copy of it as well.
You didn't forward this one too?
I thought I forwarded this one too.
I think you did.
What's that?
I think you did.
Okay. All right, so introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Katie Weiss with Bedford Design Consultants.
Okay.
So we were here earlier this year for the auto fair right on the corner of Continental and 101A. And this project is right next to that and is kind of an associated use. So right now they're doing construction on the auto fair building.
Yeah.
As part of that, we're proposing, and this is an existing building on the site here, but we're proposing putting in a car rental facility with parking around it and storage for the cars they're going to be renting, as well as a large parking lot for employees to park at, because they are having issues with parking over here, and then a large storage lot that will have a big fence around it. That basically will keep people out. It's going to have cameras and that kind of thing. It's just to store the cars. So around the site, we do have 3 residential abutters. We got the Home Depot over here, Pennachuck Square over here. And this site right now is zoned residential, but in 2004 they got a zoning variance, and so this use is permitted, as we were conditionally approved the other night. So Continental Boulevard is a limited access highway, so the DOT has control of it right now. So what we're proposing is keeping the existing driveway entrance, and then we're coming up at 8% to get up here. It's a pretty steep site, like right at the beginning and then up at the end, but it's pretty flat in the center part. So the building here will be in a flat area and then go up again to the other flat areas. There are some wetlands on the site over here in this corner and a little bit right here. We're not disturbing the 25-foot non-disturbance buffer. And as part of the conditions of approval, we're actually going to be moving this corner back a little bit and putting more buffer plantings in as a request from the neighbors. Also,
Be outside that 40-foot buffer?
it won't
setback?
be outside the 40-foot, but it is allowed in there. But it will be moved back enough to get in a little bit more of a berm, and then we'll put more plantings on top of the berm, because this, I believe it's this abutter right here, he's cleared pretty far in, so he said he'll be able to see the parking lot itself. The fence is going to have slats in it, green slats, so that should help a lot with the visual in between, and the lighting is going to be pretty far over. The first pole is going to be like over here, so they shouldn't have an issue. Let's see, I don't know if you care about a lot of this stuff. So let's talk a little bit about water. Gradient plan. Let's do utility sheet 6 or 5, sorry. The top parking lot with the employees, there are 2 sediment forebays. Water is going to flow into those forebays and down into an underground detention system where the water from the rental facility will also go into that. And then that will outlet into Continental Boulevard into a swale to a catch basin. And that's, again, owned by the DOT. And then on this side of the site, water is going to flow down into this sediment forebay, then back underneath into this large underground detention area. And then also, once that gets filled, it's coming down here, and along with some of the driveway water will be held in another third underground storage facility, and then outletted onto Continental Boulevard. So at the moment, we're working with the DOT because we do need a curb cut. Well, not a curb cut, we have one already, but we need a use change. So we're discussing with them which way they would like the water to go, because this side goes out towards the 101A drainage system, and this side here, we outlet somewhere down here on Continental Boulevard. So we're discussing with them which way they'd like the water to flow. But we do meet their criteria. Yeah. I know that they have issues with the 101A, so it may possibly be that way, but we're discussing that with them. Snow store.
Top parking lot's gonna also flow to that.
Yes, it goes to the sediment forebay, down and into this one.
I'm sorry, the storage, that one.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah, what happens is there's sediment forebay here that fills up, and then this fills up, and then once that gets filled up, then it overflows out and into here. So it's like a 3-chambered system kind of thing, but one of the chambers is open, kind of what it is. Snow storage, I'm not sure which sheet that's on. We did discuss with the planning board, we originally had our snow storage here. They asked us to move it, so we're gonna put it down here, because this could potentially be an issue with water coming on to Auto Fair. And in here, snow storage, we talked about a little bit about that. Normally in the wintertime, they keep the snow storage inside the fenced area, so it can't really leave the fenced area without a truck coming in. So they maneuver the cars during storms back and forth. It's some sort of trick that they do. Do they know how to do it? I don't. And they move the snow off to the side, and if it does get really, really heavy, they will haul it off. Snow storage for down here, I believe, was right here. It's on one of the sheets. I'm not sure which. Let's see. Probably the site plan. Site plan. The site plan sheet, so sheets 3. Over here was another place where we're proposing it. So the snow storage for the other facility.
What?
You're banging the microphone.
And landscape plan, sheet 6. You can see the buffer plantings we're proposing. All the plants get pretty big. I tried to put them far enough apart that they have room to grow, but yet still block the abutters. We need alteration of terrain approval. We'll be seeking that in next week probably. And we need a sign variance for the site, which not exciting to you, but so that's pretty much it.
So the corner of that parking lot is still gonna be, and the fenced area it's outside of the
Yes.
no disturb buffer, but it's still within the setback.
The 40-foot buffer, yes, the 40-foot setback, building setback, or structure setback buffer. But we're gonna be cutting off a corner here to allow more room for a berm and more plantings for the abutter that lives over here.
But it's still gonna be inside the 40-foot.
Yes.
How far? Roughly.
Well, the 25-foot buffer is right here. We were planning on taking off a corner like that. So we look like we'll be like from the wetlands, maybe 35 feet from the
You'll
wetlands.
be putting plantings inside that, or right on the outside of the fence?
There'll be plantings in this
A
buffer.
berm and
It'll
plantings.
be a small berm and then plantings. So some of the guys in here are really tight, so we're going to be spreading them out in here and adding a little bit more.
And that's gonna be snow storage in that corner?
No.
That whole back side there?
No, the inside the fence is the snow
Right.
storage. Yes.
Right, but right.
Snow storage, yes, will be in the back.
The slopes come down, though. They come on the...
Towards that wetland.
Yes, it's curved.
So what's the plan for de-icing compounds up in that storage area?
Well, as we did on the auto fair, it's going to be the same person taking care of both sites. So we had a Green Snow certified professional is going to be working on that site, and then they'll also be working on this site. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about salt. My only concern is that we've got an 8% slope up the driveway, and this is where the trucks are going to be delivering for auto fair. They're going to come up this way, back in, and then leave. So that was my only concern as not being able to use salt, is just for that front part. But otherwise, the sediment forebays should do a good job of keeping the sand in check and such.
I see. So you're suggesting that you would only use de-icing compounds from the Enterprise
Right.
building down?
The entrance drive where there's a steep slope coming up.
What's the curb on that?
The
Full curb?
Is that a...
Oh yes, it's a full curb to here, and then not and it's a full curve to here, but then not. There's a swale, it turns into a swale, and then we'll hook into the swale along Continental, and the same thing here. There's a catch basin on Continental, like right-ish here-ish.
So we won't be seeing de-icing compounds up in the storage area then?
No, they don't need it up there. In the wintertime, they don't do a lot of movement of cars. They start to kind of lose their inventory, so the cars don't get moved a lot in the winter, and that's why there's room for snow storage. Normally in the winter, they have fewer cars.
Is there a way to get that as a note on the plans?
Sure, we could put a note in saying de-icing only allowed on the entrance drive up to the, would you like to end it? Up to the house, there's an existing house on the site.
For me, I'm okay up to the rental.
Up to the rental facility.
Property,
Okay.
but how's that everyone for everyone else?
What's the grade up from the rental property back up to the lot? You said that's another steep.
It's only like 5% here. It's not bad.
Okay. No, I'm fine with that then. Saying only to the rental office.
Okay.
Yep.
Ran into this with the outlets,
Mm-hmm.
and they talked about the use, not using calcium chloride, but using magnesium chloride, or what's the other, there's another one.
There's a potassium chloride.
Potassium chloride, rather than the calcium chloride. So does that play into this, or have they talked to you about that?
About what they want to use exactly? No.
Yeah, okay.
No, but the Green Snow program kind of speaks to what the rates they should apply and what they should apply.
Okay.
So, and that's the one that also gives them a break on liability as well if they follow the process correctly. Yeah.
All right.
So. All right. Yeah, so I did note at the planning board meeting, there was some discussion about the wetland buffer and where it was in the
Yep,
40-foot.
we had it. We had the 25-foot labeled as the wetland structure setback. It was confusing. We didn't have the
Yeah.
40-foot in there, but we weren't within the non-disturbance.
Okay, and the sheets will be updated to
Yes,
say that
yes.
appropriately? Okay.
And also the same with the snow storage? 'Cause
Yes, the
these
snow
she-
storage will
These
be
sheets are showing
updated.
them.
Yes,
above.
these are from before the planning board meeting last week.
Right. Okay, so like I picked on the last gentleman, page
Yes.
sheet 8.
I already found it while you were talking to him. It's just a standard note that you pull in and you
Yep.
forget to
Oh, I
edit.
know, yeah. I understand.
So note 19.
Well, yes, probably, but I've also found discussions of note 3 on the first column there, under seating for temporary protection of disturbed areas, but
The 3?
it's
Okay.
probably, usually, yeah, it shows up on note 19 above under general
Yeah,
construction
okay.
notes.
Note 3.
Yeah, so it shows up in different places. And,
okay.
and if you used electronic search, you might even find it somewhere else, but. But again, we're most concerned about the use of phosphates and nitrogen. So the whole idea of a low phosphate, slow-release nitrogen, and test first is really what we're promoting.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, we'll change the notes. I wrote them down, so we'll change them.
yeah. Because and then, of course, if there's any notes that dictate the application rate, that testing would help govern that as well. So landscaping-wise, around the home or the house
The
and
existing
in the
house?
rental, I'm assuming you're going to be doing grass as well and things like that?
Here around, you mean like along the sides? Or
Yeah.
here is going to be all landscaped. It'll be mulched and there'll be shrubs and things inside. Same thing with this little island, but this will all be seeded all around here.
Right. But then the general areas, you're going to leave natural, or you're going to let
Here is it's kind of gonna be the staging area for the construction, but once they're done, they're just gonna loam and seed it and let it do its thing. There's no plans to do anything here yet because of the sewer regulations right now. This house actually is gonna be disconnected from the sewer, so they won't be able to really use it at the moment, but they wanna keep the house for the future
Right, okay.
10, whatever years down the road.
All right, yeah, because you can only have one structure on one line,
Right,
right?
so the rental facility is gonna get the sewer, and
Okay,
the other building will have to stay.
right. And that's also Pennachuck Water probably down there?
I believe it is.
Yeah, okay. All right, what else?
Are the other utilities gonna be dropped from the house?
I think the power will stay. I think the water is going to stay. I think in the future they're thinking maybe they possibly might be able to get a septic on it. I know there's some regulations against having both, but if you can't hook up, it's gonna be a to-do, but they're going to keep electricity and they're gonna keep water.
If they're gonna disconnect from the sewer, then probably the water should be shut off.
Probably, yes. But,
So we're not having,
right, but with the sewer itself, they're actually gonna go in and take the line out. For the water, they could just shut off the water and keep the line there.
Any other comments? Recommendations?
The plantings, I don't recognize by looking at them.
Okay.
native.
Native?
Some of them are native. They got the pin oak.
Maple.
It was really hard to find smaller ones because I wanted to not have them get too big so I could put them closer together. So I wanted a lot of smaller ones. A lot of the ones you had got like 40 feet wide, and I didn't want to put them really close together because we were doing a type C buffer, I believe. And so we needed to have a certain amount in that little 20-foot area. And because the plants get so big, I didn't want them to crowd each other completely. I know that the point is to have them get big, but I didn't want them to get too big. So a lot of the ones in here and along that edge, especially up here where there wasn't a lot of room, I did pick plants that were smaller. We've got Colorado spruce, balsam fir. If there's anything you'd like me to change it to, you have a specific one that you would like, I can certainly do that.
I don't know enough,
Yeah, I
but
was really
some of
relying
them
on
look
Lauren being here.
very non-native to me.
Well, the two bottom ones are actually ornamental plants that are in the front here. So the emperor and the weeping Colorado spruce, they're not going to be in the outside part. They're just over here. So you've got an Austrian pine, Colorado spruce, balsam fir, pin oak, and sugar maple.
I'll include that sheet.
6.
So similar to the issue that we have with burning bush now, we don't want to be the ones that introduce the next invasive species.
Okay.
So that's,
That makes sense, yeah.
trying to stick with the most native plants we can.
Yeah, and I'd hate to see the Big Daddy plantation lily be the next invasive, because I'd hate to say that in a ton of meetings.
It's a hosta.
It's
It's hosta,
yeah.
so.
Oh, the deer are gonna love that.
That's right. You'll be feeding them.
Yeah, so hostas, daylily, stonecrop, and some sage for around the building. Those are just around the building.
Yeah.
They're not.
We found it doesn't matter where they are, they'll spread.
They'll spread.
So I just want to make sure that,
Okay.
that we don't see something that's,
Those ones are contained within, they're not out in the open area, so.
So these prints are gonna get revised and they're gonna resubmit it to,
Yep, we're submitting on the 30th, and we'll be at the, I believe, the October 21st planning board meeting for them to see some of the revisions that we've done and some new elevations.
because most of all the things I found were already had contingencies on from the planning board, so.
Right, okay. Yeah, and I did see the word straw in this one, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Straw? Which one?
As opposed to hay. We like
Okay.
straw. We
You
don't
like straw,
hay.
okay, yeah, I thought so, okay.
Yeah, straw's good. Anything else? Oh, thank you for coming out.
All right, you're welcome, thank you very much.
All right, so So next is Boomer McLeod, Car Audio. You need a break?
I think it's supposed to be McLeod.
McLeod, yep, sorry, McLeod, sorry. Come on up.
Ready if you are.
Yep. Hey, we're doing good on time.
Don't jinx yourself.
Should I recuse since I hadn't put in my, remote start in my car?
No.
Hope it works.
It does, very nicely, thank you.
So, yeah, I just need your name and your firm or your, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Earl Blatchford. I'm with Hayner Swanson, located at 3 Congress Street in Nashua, representing the applicant, Boomer McLeod. It's car audio and electronics, retail and installation facility. The existing site is that we're proposing to put the store is 5 Executive Park Drive, which also identified as map 4D lot 73. It's located on the easterly side of Executive Park Drive, right across from the now vacant hotel. The lot was created back in the late 70s when Executive Park Drive and the hotel were built, and then ensuing 2 office buildings and the theater have been built since then. There's still a couple of, there's one partially developed lot and one vacant lot up the road. So this lot has been here. It's zone C2 commercial. It's a little over an acre and a half, and it was created over 35 years ago, basically. And I don't know how many proposals there have been for this lot because of its size. I think there's been more interest in the other parcels. But it's, as I said, it's on the east side of Executive Park Drive, and it's bounded on the east side by the F.E. Everett Turnpike. There's really nothing to the south, and on the north is a commercial lot with office building on it. And as I said, on the west side across the street is the now vacant hotel. The site is predominantly wooded. It has a high plateau area here, and then the grades kind of dive down into a ravine because Natticook Brook, which is piped through the hotel property and under the road, discharges at the north end of the line. The property line's right here, and Natticook Brook flows right through the property at the north end. There's about a 20-foot wide wetland associated with the brook, and there's also some floodway and floodplain associated with it. All of our proposed work is well above that. There's no impacts to wetlands or floodplain with this proposal. The soils on site are predominantly Windsor soils, sandy, well-drained soils. The site is serviced from the street, Merrimack Village District Water, town sewer, and then underground electric, telephone, gas are all in the street. Let me flip to the proposal. So what we're proposing is a 2-story, 7,500 square foot building, and we've gone with a 2-story format because of the steep topography on the north end of the site. We tried siting a one-story building. It just simply didn't, there wasn't enough room for that. So we went with the two-story concept. And the building itself is the lower level is basically 4 service bays. This access is strictly for access to those lower level service bays, and we have some employee parking here. On this side, this is the customer entrance up on the upper level, and we've got the customer parking out here. We've got 25 spaces, surface spaces proposed initially. We are hoping to get 10 additional spaces right in here, but it's contingent on getting an easement from the state. They own this little strip of land between our property and the turnpike. So we have designed our drainage system to accommodate that. We don't need the parking to meet the regulation, as the building actually in the garage space can accommodate 10 cars. So we exceed the, we've discussed that with planning staff, and they will count the parking inside. So we meet the parking requirement, but the owner would prefer to have those additional spaces, you know, as many as they can get, given the nature of their business. They're very busy. That's why they're leaving the space they're in and moving to a new space.
So you said the drainage does accommodate for those 10?
Yes, yes, we've designed for that, and so if we do get the easement, and we're going to the planning board next week, and we're asking for those spaces to be approved, and they're contingent on getting that easement. If we don't get the easement, then they don't get built. It's that simple. But we think this is a simple enough plan that the planning board can consider that, and we're hoping they consider it in a single meeting, because the process with the state could be dragged out. So, I mean, this whole site could be built the way it's shown, and those spaces could come, 6 months or, a year down the road. So we're trying to leave ourselves some flexibility. The entire site is curbed. We have, again, the upper lot. The building is a center gable roof, so the peak of the roof is right here, sheets this way. It's caught in a gutter and downspout system and picked up in our closed drainage system. So we pick up the upper lot in this corner. We pick up this lower pavement area down here at a low point in the driveway. And then all of this is piped together along with the roof drains. Right here, we have a underground detention and infiltration system. It's designed to infiltrate everything up through the 50-year storm. We have included an overflow pipe, but you'll have to exceed the 50-year storm for anything to get into that system at all. So it's just kind of a safeguard. It's always good to have an overflow. If you can, we prefer to do this rather than try to connect down here to the head wall that's on site and have any kind of wetland disturbance. We wanted to avoid that. So we're simply going to core into the existing manhole here, and then, again, unless there's an extraordinary storm, there won't be any flow coming out of the system at all. It'll all infiltrate into the ground. The catch basins are proposed. They have sumps. They're also proposed to have gas hoods to address sediment and any petroleum products that are in the runoff. In the infiltration system, we have a isolator row, which is baffled. That knocks out a lot of the sediment. What doesn't get captured in the catch basins and flows through will get captured in the isolator row, which will be maintained along with the catch basins on a regular basis. And of course, everything infiltrates in the ground. So there's no sediment leaving the system whatsoever. So we think that's a good system. There's good pre-treatment. This is a small development, doesn't require an alteration of terrain permit, but we've met all of the requirements that DES would require if we were applying for it. In fact, we've really exceeded their requirements. We've met the towns, and so, but we're using, definitely using best management practices on the drainage system. We have, there are some notes on the plan that speak to the winter maintenance. We have called for no sodium or calcium chloride to be used. There is snow storage areas on sheet 4 of the site plan. And basically, it's around the perimeter, and we have included a note saying that
Truck it off.
if need be, that any excess snow would be trucked off-site. There is also some language about the green snow contractor or an equivalent certification is the intent as far as the snow maintenance goes. There's also language, I think fairly standard language, regarding judicious use of landscape products, fertilizers, herbicides. I think it's pretty much the standard language that you look for on sheet 1 of the plan. And we've included the landscape plan. That's pretty much it. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. But as I said, it's a small site plan. We think we've addressed all of the design issues. We've met with staff. We're going to the planning board next week. And the only state permit this does require is for the sewer discharge, and we've filed that with the staff at the wastewater treatment plant. We've given them everything they've asked for. So we've talked with planning, we've talked with Public Works, so we think we've addressed most of the issues getting ready for a planning board meeting. So hopefully we've addressed your issues as well, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
You made a comment that in the write-up here that the connection to the manhole, the overflow, is proposed. Is that, it was at the time and it's now going to happen, or is it still a proposed?
Well, we're still waiting for comments from CLD. I haven't gotten any feedback from Public Works. I did point that out that we are planning on doing that. I haven't gotten any pushback from it, so, I mean, if they were to say we couldn't do that, then I'd be surprised if they did, because I think it's a very reasonable proposal. As I said, I mean, we're infiltrating up through the 50-year storm, so again, we'll figure out something that makes sense in the event that they say no, but I can't imagine that they would, because there's really no impact to the street system. So it's just good engineering practice.
And this is a two-story structure. It's on a slab. So there's no basement or just
Right.
footing.
It's actually a one-story structure in the back and a two-story structure, or 2 stories in the back and 1 in the front.
Yeah. This is Jack Reed. He's
For the contractor.
yeah, and
We built it into the side of the hill. We designed the building to match the lot rather than try to find a lot to match the building.
yeah. So the building's really, the lower level is 17 feet high. It's really acting as a retaining structure as well as building space. It was in lieu of constructing separate retaining walls. So, and then the upper level is 12 feet high. It's more of a standard commercial story height. So, but we did make the lower level a little bit taller than was necessary to help us accommodate the grades that we're finding on that part of the site.
Anything else, Gage?
I didn't see the timeline. What's the timeline for construction, starting construction? Your proposed timeline for starting construction?
ASAP.
As soon as possible. Yeah, literally. I think it would be, I think ideally by the end of the year it would be constructed, but as soon as possible. Things would have to go.
Certainly by spring.
Yeah, definitely winter construction. as necessary. So, and completion as soon as possible.
The silt fence, especially if you get, if you get delayed and into spring, your silt fence is gonna become very important, because that's a steep hill.
Yep.
Right grade, a very steep grade. Okay.
Yeah, and it would be required that, the contractor inspect and maintain during the entire construction process. So, usually in the wintertime, ground freezes,
Right.
gets snow covered. I would be more concerned about possible snow knocking the fence down, that type of thing. The sediment shouldn't be an issue during the wintertime, once the ground freezes. And the construction, the activity will be pretty much contained in the building for the most part.
The magic word straw again, I see that in yours, straw bales. I know they're a little harder to come by, but
Yeah, and actually, we're not, that's we sort of leave that for the contractor. We're not specifically showing them. If you notice, we don't call for any straw bales to be on the plans. We have silt fence, we have silt sacks.
yeah, well, it actually does come out on the plan as a reinforcement to the, it's on sheet 8.
Yeah, I think there's a detail there, but
Yeah,
we're not
detail,
actually
right.
calling for that,
Yeah,
that
gotcha.
practice, that erosion control practice anywhere on the plan.
Yeah.
But sometimes they get used, the contractor uses it, but.
Yeah.
So, we've tried to get away from, bale structures as much as possible.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we've used stone and block, but we're finding silt sack we like it, the contractors like it, and it seems to as long as it gets maintained, they work really well. So.
The sheet 13 talks about the plantings.
Yeah. And I didn't do it, so I won't be able to. Joe Hockren from Blackwater Design did the, so sheet 13, go ahead.
Just wondering about native plantings.
I would have to consult with, I'll just read through the planting list.
Because again, even on page 14, you make a comment about the shrub, and I'm sure B&B does not mean burning bush, but I wasn't sure what the B&B meant.
No, that's just the way it's put in burlap.
Oh,
Basically,
bag and burlap, okay.
Bag and burlap, yeah. So, yeah, no burning bush.
Okay.
Definitely not. No, and there's no, I know some of the towns have problems with like Norway maple, things like that, because they tend to be kind of dominant. I will double check with Joe Hockren and just make sure that none of these would be, considered non-native. And if they are, we can substitute them easily.
Thank you.
Yeah, we see some azaleas or something, but those are probably pretty much close to the main property. Did I not read that right? I see white pines, crab apples, junipers. Yeah, it's pretty the standard stuff that you see around buildings.
Mm-hmm.
There is a landscape or roadside mix that's gonna go in the back along the slope that leads down towards the sewer in Natticook Brook.
Right, and
And
that's,
that's a traditional, that looks pretty much like a traditional mix.
yeah, it's similar to, I think, to the conservation mix. It's basically, you plant it and you don't maintain it.
Right,
It'll
yeah.
just go natural.
Right, you don't mow it or anything.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there won't be any mowing on that slope.
Right, yeah.
We basically just want to reestablish it, get it stabilized,
Yeah.
and let it go back to natural.
Mhm.
There is the sewer easement. One thing I didn't mention is along the brook, there's also the Natticook Brook Sewer Interceptor. And the only thing we're doing is raising a manhole on that. We've talked to Public Works sometime in the near future, I think about 2 years. They're actually going to build a pump station along just to the north of us and abandon that line. So, Yeah, so there is an easement through there, but they really don't get in there and maintain it and clear it. It's just kind of that's one of the reasons they want to abandon it, because it's just a tough area to get into. So we're going to let it go natural, and I suspect they'll abandon it by basically cutting it and plugging it at both ends, so that pipe will stay in the ground and it'll just get overgrown over time. So it'll go back to natural.
Anyone else have anything? Anyone have anything else?
You mentioned you would have some kind of management plan to maintain that stormwater scenario.
On our erosion control plan, we have recommended inspection and maintenance schedules that we've always standard quarterly inspections, semi-annual cleanings.
Okay.
Yeah, it's important to maintain those systems. With collecting sediment, you want to get the sediment out of there periodically so they keep functioning as designed.
Yeah, or you pay the price later.
Yeah, exactly.
So I did notice fertilizer mixes on sheet 14. No, you've heard my spiel. So that's note number 9. So essentially, they're showing a mix of 12, 25, 12, which says phosphate's going to be even the predominant mix, the predominant one item in there.
Again, I can talk to Joe Hockran about that.
Yeah, to be honest with you, with that site and being so close to Natticook Brook, which happens to feed Horseshoe Pond, which we've had lots of issues with phosphates and really nasty things in there.
Yeah.
We'd like to see no phosphate on this site if at all possible.
Yeah, I'll talk to him about that.
I would. The rest of you agree, but we've had
very much.
Yeah. So it would be a no phosphate, slow release nitrogen, if it's indeed needed after testing.
Yeah.
That's very close to Horseshoe Pond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't have any. I'm glad we didn't have any problems this year like we had last year.
Right.
Not a lot of rain this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing is, test first, why spend the money?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
so that's the only other note. I do appreciate the no salt, no de-icing compounds.
Yeah, it works well. For this site, we've got a small area right in the upper driveway. As you come into the parking lot, we've got 4% grades. The rest of them are more in the order of 2%. So it's pretty flat. In the paved areas, it's pretty flat. Everywhere else, it's very steep.
Yeah.
So, but we've managed to make the driving areas very reasonable grades. So that should work out fine. There shouldn't be issues with it.
Anyone have anything else?
I had one quick question. You made a comment here about the 50-year infiltrate, the 50-year flood, but then further on down you say you're designed for a 25-year storm event, the piping.
The pipes themselves are designed for 25-year, which is standard.
Okay.
And then the stormwater management areas, you design for the 25-year, you check for the 50. Make sure that you've got a foot of free board, or in this case, that it's contained in the system. So if you're an open basin, you'd want to have a minimum foot of freeboard for the 50-year storm. In this case, it's just contained within the pipe and stone that comprise the system. So basically all storms, 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, it handles all of them.
Okay.
Probably handles the 100. It really does. We just stopped at 50. But no, it works very well because the soils have a good percolation rate. So.
Good.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So see our folks for the next item on the agenda aren't here yet. I'm expecting them to show up later after they meet with the school board, so we'll jump right to Jesse. Right.
Good evening, folks. Jesse Frazier with Critter Control of 144 Wire Road. Hopefully a easy one for you guys tonight. Here to satisfy ZBA requirements to meet with you guys for pending site plan approval for parking our existing storage trailer at 140 to 142 Wire Road. Open for questions and comments.
That's
So you said this is an existing trailer, so it's already
Existing,
there
yes.
and has been there for,
3 years
Okay.
before I got a letter in the mail saying, hey, you guys need to do stuff. So, hence the ZBA to make sure that we can have a business in the R1 residential district and aquifer protection areas. I am within setbacks for everything as far as the planning board, but I have to meet with you guys so I can get your, hopefully, stamp of approval here.
Yeah, so what you storing?
What came up beforehand, we are a wildlife control firm, so we do not have any pesticides or anything else. So we have some paint and some caulking as far as like chemicals go. The rest of it is going to be hard good, we're just like a regular contractor. So roofing materials, roofing guns, AC compressors, all that sort of stuff. We don't have any kind of like chemicals. So we don't spray, we don't kill any bugs. So pesticide storage is not an issue.
All right, so nothing's gonna leak through the bottom of it?
Nothing's going to
no?
leak through anything, yeah.
Right, so you don't need any special spill containment areas or anything like that?
Not to
no?
my knowledge, unless you guys say otherwise, but
Yeah.
we have a paint cabinet that holds some spray cans. That's it. And we're talking like 30, just regular rattle cans.
so there's no oil or maintenance, vehicle maintenance type stuff in there, nothing.
I might have like a quart of oil, but
Yeah.
I mean, these days,
Anything people have in their shed or whatever.
these days we bring our vehicles in for service and everything else. Diesel equipment costs a lot, so it gets maintained elsewhere, so. We do own and operate a lift, but again, that gets serviced elsewhere with the contracts and everything, so.
So you don't really do any vehicle maintenance around site? There's no, other than hard,
Might
traps or
have
whatever,
an
things like
extra
that
thing
that
of
are right.
oil for a piece of equipment, but nothing more than you have at your house.
Perfect.
Nothing special.
You access all that through the gravel driveway from the?
That access is via our personal house, yep.
Yeah.
We have no plans of adding any kind of driveway. We kind of want to run everything under the radar.
Okay, yeah.
So the opening into the other parcel there, you said you have a stockade fence up?
Yep, there's a stockade fence up in front of the trailer now to kind of obscure, when you're on Wire Road, to obscure the front of the trailer from.
So there's no opening or anything on that, that's just, right?
You access via.
Yeah, everything's in from there, so you have
Yeah.
no intention of going through there as a,
No.
okay.
If the land wasn't already cleared before we bought it, it would have been wooded, and nobody would have known that we had anything there. But unfortunately, it was logged
Yeah.
from Lamontaine's issued to want to sell the lot. So
So you got it from them, huh?
yes, I wasn't able to afford it at the fire sale.
All right, okay, right, I remember
Yeah.
when we did that, yeah, yeah. So,
That's when it was a fire sale.
The trailer?
Yep.
Is it on a gravel pad?
It's a 40-foot storage trailer, so it is not on any kind of. The lot is almost all sand, so it is just sitting on jack stands now and cinder blocks, just like a regular mobile home or a construction trailer. It's just sitting there now.
Okay.
The tires on it, all the good stuff.
yeah, where you're not adding any pavement, we don't have issues with all that, too.
Yeah, gravel's good. That's how all of our ancestors got by for years and years. So
And then my only other concern is that you're not putting salt down on the gravel to
I
get it
just
through the
plow it
winter,
just
right?
as
Just
is,
plow
and-
as, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
that's what they have studs on snow tires for.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
was the
So,
thing to
so
come
that's that'd be my only recommendation, is that you don't use salt or de-icing compounds on
Yeah.
there, which is pretty obvious, but,
I was concerned about what was stored in the trailer.
yeah,
That was
right.
it.
Nails and screws
Yeah.
and caulking and roofing materials and wood, the traps, and that's about it.
Anything else? Do you
Stamp
mind?
of approval?
Yeah, yeah, I'll forward the comment that we, now that we know what you're storing, and there'll be no salt or de-icing compounds, but do you mind doing a public safety, not public, helping the public out because of your business? I have a question for you.
We do lots of that.
So, I just figured. So, I happened to catch an article in the Union Leader
Okay.
where you were in there talking about the fact that this is the time of year when rodents and other critters want to.
Was that the one recently or the one
Yeah,
from
the
like
one on
last year?
Sunday.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was talking about how critters want to find a home inside our homes now. So, what was interesting to me is there was a comment about them going into or under the vinyl siding.
Yeah.
Where's a common area where they would do that?
Vinyl siding, the corners of your house.
Yeah.
On certain styles, on vinyl siding, the corner's open.
Mhm.
Houses built after like 05-ish, you usually have a wider vinyl siding in a corner,
Yeah.
and they're actually packed with styrofoam. There's a styrofoam insert. But houses built prior to that, the corner, which is about this big,
Right.
is just open. So it's like a conduit. They
And they
basically
just
crawl right up, and then you get chipmunks and mice and rats and things like that inside the attic space.
So to help educate the public, how do they prevent that access? Do they spray foam in there, or do you?
Foam is a good deterrent, but it's not 100%. Caulking and steel mesh is the best.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
I don't like to chew through the steel wool and stuff.
Yeah, steel wool will eventually rot out. Steel wool lasts about 6 months outside.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just happened to catch that, but it was nothing in the article that says how you prevent it.
I've listed a whole bunch of stuff. Space.
Yeah, the editor.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Non-expanding foam, to be specific.
We recommend no foam.
Oh.
We don't use any kind of foam at all. Caulking is the best. If you can pack it with steel mesh and then caulk over the bottom of it, it creates an airtight plug so that rodents can't feel any kind of draft. Foam they can just chew through. So we've been to lots of houses where there's foam in all the corners and mice or rats have chewed everything out. Then we have to carve out all that foam.
Get your metal mesh.
It costs more than just us sealing it. There's the carving out the old foam.
Yeah.
Fees and all that.
Okay. Great. I appreciate your help educate
All right.
us and our viewers.
you.
So.
Thank you, folks.
Good. Thank you. All right.
My house where you're wasting your time.
Just let them in
That's true.
anyway. Just leave the door open, right?
Just buy a lot of decon.
I've relocated 3 skunks in the past 2 weeks.
From your property?
That time of year.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm getting good at it. You might need to hire me.
I'm waiting for him to hit the yellow jacket nests out in my yard. That where the raccoons usually rip them apart after a while.
All right. So, Mr. Clinton from Meridian is upstairs with the school board. He was hoping he'd be done by this time.
So you guys have all the luck.
Yeah.
We want to just keep going?
Yeah, so I thought we would continue with our agenda, and then we'll see where we're at, so. So the next thing on the agenda was the old business invasive spraying review. Just to, even though we covered most of this before, what I had wanted to do here was have our final discussion about how to deal with 8 Brookside Drive, which we did. I wasn't sure when I made the agenda up if I would have some recommendations from the town manager as to how the town would like us to proceed, so. But we've pretty much taken that recommendation and acted on it, so I think we're good with that. We've already approved Mike's plan. The one thing we didn't approve, but I think we didn't have it in our motion specifically, was signage. I was thinking that, we really only need to put temporary signs up to say we're going to be spraying, or we are, or it's been sprayed.
That's too bad Mike was here. Is that something I would imagine he'd have, or basically would have signs that say?
He's probably required by his applicator's license to do something.
I would think so.
Yeah, so,
Because you see those all around when you see lawn care companies going
Right.
out and
Yeah.
fertilizing lawns and.
And he was quick to begin nodding his head when he said, it's gonna be signage. He was like, oh, yeah, that's gonna be there, so.
Yeah, he also looked over at me too, so.
Well,
So I
yeah.
wasn't sure there was a common understanding there,
Yeah,
except
so,
that
I
we
mean,
were
yeah,
gonna
I
do
suppose we
signs.
should just check with him real quick and make sure
Yeah.
one way or the other, but,
So that was my intent, and if we need to do signs, I think there's enough leeway for us to just do what we have to do.
I would be a little concerned about what it says.
Mhm.
I mean, I would think if we're gonna post a sign, it would have to be relatively specific as to what, what's going on, you know? So, that would be my only concern.
Yeah, okay, so, any thoughts on the language?
Well, that's the thing, I would imagine, like you said, the licensed applicator probably has some very specific
Yep.
verbiage that has to go up on that sign to say, what's going on, so that would be, I guess, more my question is to.
All it says is a toxic herbicide, pesticide, or whatever has been applied to the property, keep off. When you walk by, you can smell it.
Yeah.
So,
It's okay. You can get set up, we're just working around you.
oh yeah, it's all your fault.
Not waiting, we have other things to do too, but
We're moving right along, as they say.
surprisingly, our agenda's gone fairly quickly,
I
so,
had no expectation it would go that fast with what you had on there.
right,
Nor did I think the school board meeting would last as long as it did, but
Yeah.
it did.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I would be deferring to Mike or some other, some other
Okay.
person who's done this and knows what the heck they're supposed to put up on the sign.
All right, so I'll defer to Mike.
I suppose too, or maybe Tractor Supply, wherever you could buy pesticides may also have
Mhm.
some warning signs or something maybe that would say, don't breathe.
Yep.
Or something along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't tell you, when they sprayed us with the DET, we used to watch them spray it with Agent Orange. Every Monday morning, the C-123s would be out there spraying 20 miles out.
All right, well then, what I'm gonna do is, for this item, Tomasian Drive LLC, I'm going to recuse and allow Matt to take the meeting from here. And then we will pick up again on our agenda after Ken is complete. So, as a note, Ken, I did not see a wetlands permit. I don't know if you filed it or not, so,
I'll speak to that.
okay, that'd be great.
With a big grin on his face.
It's all yours.
Thanks, Matt. For the record, Ken Clinton with Meridian Land Services on behalf of Tunisian Drive LLC. This is a 19-lot open space subdivision. I've been before you probably 3 to 4 months ago, I think, to introduce you to the idea of this subdivision, which required ZBA variance to allow a cluster in the zone, and a cluster that, while it's served by public water, it's not public sewer. So these are individual septic systems on each lot. We did receive that, both variances from the ZBA, and we've proceeded through the planning process. And we're before you tonight in two particular reasons. One, because the property is subject to the aquifer zone. It's adjacent to the Sauhegan River. And secondly, we do have a wetland permit we're poised to file, and I wanted to share with you the nature of the permit and the necessity and some of the specifications of it. In general, as we last talked, the property's about 50 acres, just about 50 acres. And we introduced this general concept to you when we were here last. Tomasian Drive is, well, with this plan, north is facing me, so Tomasian Drive runs pretty much north-south, just north of Amherst Road, the intersection that also includes Full Mill Road. 50 acres. Adjacent is the town of Merrimack. It's the Ireland parcel, if you recall, that's under conservation easement. To the north is the Sauhegan River. To the north and west are other lands of Temazian, and this is a more recent 3-lot subdivision that another surveyor had done, but I helped represent before the planning board. So the yield was 20 lots. We show a proposed 19. We show a proposed road in this fashion, with the open space starting in the corner adjacent to Amherst Road, running up and around and adjacent with the town of Merrimack land. And then the largest swath of open space was adjacent to the Sauhegan River. At its closest point, it's just over 400 feet from the river itself. And then that open space comes down next to Warren and Angela Tamazian's property, down again, and has some frontage on Tamazian Drive. So the 19 lots are in a cluster surrounded by this road. I'll speak to the aquifer line once again. Part of the regulations is that any property being subdivided that is subject to the aquifer come before the Conservation Commission and get some level of endorsement and understanding. This line here, shown on our plan, this is the aquifer zone, so anything to the north towards the Sauhegan River technically is the aquifer, and everything to the south is out of the aquifer. Well, as this line runs nearly parallel with the river, bordering from anywhere from 75 to 150 feet or so from the river, the nearest lot line is greater than 400 feet, and so certainly all the development is substantially away from the aquifer zone itself. I had shared these points when we talked last and sought some level of endorsement from the commission as we went for our variance, and I think that was understood at that point and recognized as an overall good way to protect the river and have some quality open space that is set aside. And so I don't know that anything's changed as far as our approach from that standpoint, so I would trust that the commission would feel that's appropriate to continue in that fashion. Is there any questions specific to the aquifer zone? Well, moving on, the open space itself, I introduced the idea that we may seek to either convey it to the town in fee or possibly easement. Obviously, in an open space development, there's nothing in the regulations that say you shall have your open space deeded to the town or a separate conservation easement granted to the town. It's pretty much wide open to the developer. We offered or suggested right from the start that if the planning board and the conservation commission and the town staff departments feel it's appropriate to own the open space and fee and add it to the island land, we're open to do that, and we've committed that that would be gifted. It has to remain protected open space. So to me, it makes just as much sense for the town to own it than a fractional interest of all these homeowners. They'd have a 1/19th interest. It doesn't really matter. If the Conservation Commission felt it was agreeable to oversee it in that capacity, then that's fine too. If it's just an easement, that's something that you guys can talk about, and if you feel strongly, we can go anyway. I think it makes sense to be added to the island parcel, quite frankly, personally. A group of 19 individuals really don't have much desire to police and enforce something. If the town already has the island parcel right there, it does make logical sense to link them up, at least in an easement standpoint. But I don't know if you guys can talk about it. And while we do have a planning board meeting on the 23rd on this, certainly that by no means is the last item on our checklist. We certainly have AOT permit that we're working through, a wetlands permit we're about to file. So there's time to work out the legalities of the disposition of that open space. Retained with the development, with the slim protections of the open space regulations, higher level of protective easement granted to the town with the oversight of the Conservation Commission, or completely in fee interest, and then the town can hopefully direct who they feel should oversee the easement. I don't know if you have any comments, preferences at this point, but I can leave it at that for you to discuss amongst yourselves later at your next meeting, however you like to engage in that dialogue, and get back to me. it's,
You'd be the agent to talk to.
yeah, at least
okay.
initially.
Okay.
I mean, since I have the connectivity of how the presentations have been, you know, I certainly wouldn't work out the
Right.
the legal language, but at least at this point, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I believe Tim has all my contact information at my office, email, phone, et cetera.
I see the open space line along the
Tough to see if you, yeah.
along the you know, the borders of the Ireland property.
Comes right all in through there, yeah.
What about the frontage along the Sahuagin River?
All this is open space,
Okay,
all through down into here, and then there's frontage onto Mason Drive again over here.
understood. Okay.
And with that, if you don't recall, the open space by regulation also has a 100-foot buffer along the outside of it, which is a bit redundant in this case. That really protects, if you have proposed residential lots up against right up against the property line, then that 100-foot buffer comes into play. That then you have to. The idea is that a cluster is more dense, where the underlying zone might be, say, 100,000 square foot minimum lot area. That's you know, net, non-wetland, et cetera. Well, if you're up against a large lot, the idea is that buffer protects the large lot at that much greater density versus these newly created cluster lots at a smaller density. It supposedly buffers and protects the value and the underlying zone characteristics. In this case, that 100-foot strip is all within the open space anyways, so it's almost redundant, but it certainly would be subject to that.
All right, so we got two wetland impact areas, or just the one?
Just one. So I'll move on to that item. And as we were getting ready for this discussion, I had every expectation that we would be talking about the permit as filed. I thought that would occur no later than certainly today, but I anticipated that would happen Friday. However, as you are well aware, when you file a wetlands permit, you have to contact certain state agencies and get input, et cetera, on specifically National Heritage Bureau about threatened or endangered species. We also have to talk to the Division of Historical Resources about any potential archaeological sites. There are two hits as far as threatened or endangered species that are in the general vicinity of the property. And forgive me, this is our in-progress wetlands application package. Being on the Conservation Commission, I'm sure you know about the spotted turtle and the Blandings turtle. This was received by our office from the National Heritage Bureau. Forgive the scale, but that little area is the area of our crossing. Across the Sahuagin and across Wilson Hill Road to the northeast, there was a sighting of a Blandings turtle sometime, and the reporting period is between 2007 and 2011, if I'm not mistaken, for all of these. Blandings turtle, another Blandings turtle was up over the power lines out in that vicinity. There was a spotted turtle over here in Amherst, just north of the golf course. So this is now Spring Road in Amherst, off in this direction. And then there was a concentration, you should be happy about this, in the Horse Hill, of both Blandings turtle and spotted turtles in this vicinity. So what happens this to the National Heritage Bureau, this is a flag, if you will, that in the general vicinity there's been sightings or reportings of threatened and or endangered species. They pause. They don't just say there's no occurrences in your area and please proceed with your wetlands permit. They pause. And then they start to ask additional questions about the overall subdivision, namely, what are you doing to protect as much area as possible on your property? Well, we tried to explain to them this is an open space subdivision and 50% minimum of the area has to be protected. In this particular case, this is what we've done. They wanted more questions answered, like what's the general drainage design like? Is the open space going to be protected by any easements and covenants and restrictions, et cetera? And so as recently as I think late morning, we sent back an email answering their questions. explaining, and in fact, we cut and paste some of the Merrimack zoning ordinance as far as the requirements for the open space, how it's supposed to be handled, the options that it could be conveyed to the town or further protected under easement, et cetera, and we have not heard back. We cannot file our application until we hear back from them stating that they understand the level of protection and the quality of the design, quite frankly, which substantially protects the Sauhegan River. And like I said, at its closest point, it's 400 feet. And that's at the closest point to a lot. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that closest point of the lot would be developed. There's a house that's going to be closer to the road. However, we can't file this until we receive comment back that they understand that and they find that that's acceptable. So we are somewhat at a standstill now. Do I expect to receive a positive endorsement based on the subdivision design? The answer is yes. This is actually a very well thought out design that we had been able to receive the ZBA variances for, that allowed us to get to this point. However, it's just another one of these steps in the bureaucracy that we have to go through the motions, the right stages, the right set of reviews, and et cetera, to be able to file this formally. So while I do have a preliminary copy, and I also have a copy of our drainage calculations, I'm happy to leave this with you as long as you understand that this is not the official copy that you get through the town clerk. And as soon as we get that level of satisfaction from the state on this, then we can certainly file formally. As far as the impact itself goes, there is a drainage course that runs, once again, I'm going to flip this so it's a little more logical. North is now straight up this page. So from Amherst Road, there's a natural drainage course that flows through the property to the Sauhegan River. In order to access this usable area on the site, you have to make some level of wetland crossing. We proposed the road in this location, once again, to create as much separation from the Sauhegan River while still adding some width to the open space adjacent to the town-owned land. So logically, the crossing location is positioned here. That's about 3,300 square feet. It's certainly not a minimum expedited application we're filing. It's a standard application. We have a 30-inch culvert proposed, a single culvert with head walls and some riprap on the downslope side to slow down the water coming through the culvert. Quite frankly, that's as minimum design as we could possibly have considered, and quite frankly, in my opinion, it's a rather small impact for a 19-lot subdivision, especially when you consider the rest of the protections that are going along with the quality open space.
How big was the culvert, did you say?
30.
3-inch. 30-inch.
30 inch?
And how long?
Let's see, I have that in my
32 feet.
guessing 60 at the most. I don't even think it's, yeah, it's about 60. And we have 2-to-1 side slopes proposed, turf reinforced to allow for as minimal impact as possible. The town requirements are 3-to-1, and so we're trying to narrow those up, and that's going to be a waiver item that we'll have to ask for. But generally, in this case, where you're trying to reduce the overall wetland impact, and as long as you show that the side slopes will be stable, that's something that is, I don't want to say routinely granted. It's not like it's a sure thing, but they understand that that makes sense. And the overall transition from the natural grade to the proposed grade of the road is in the vicinity of 3.5 to 4 feet from my plan.
Is that road staked off now?
No, it's not. At this point, we only have test pits dug in there on either side of the road for each one of the lots, but we don't have the road itself staked.
No center line or anything, there's nothing, no marking, nothing?
I probably wouldn't even do a very good job of walking it, quite
All right,
frankly.
Okay. factors. So it looks like that in the, when you get onto SP one, it looks like most of the drainage is coming back to a low point culvert on the last piece of property there.
As far as the road drainage that we're intercepting, collecting, it's then, yes, going all to the back of lots 11 and 12. In this particular case, the soil conditions, while they're suitable for individual septics, they're not so suitable for what the AOT is seeking as infiltration. Fairly high water table. The quality of the parent soil is not conducive to infiltrating, so it's more of a traditional detention area than an infiltration area. So yes, the drainage is, SP1 you can see is predominantly, if not exclusively, on lot 12.
Yep.
There is, however, a more natural swale through lots, say the beginning of 8 up in the corner here, through 9, 10, and 11. And we're looking to retain that. And it's partly going to be collected under easement that, although there are driveway culverts over there, it's important for that channel to remain unobstructed. And so we're going to share with the planning board that we feel that at least the ones immediately near the cul-de-sac for lots 9 and 10 be collected in an easement. And the easement isn't necessarily for the town to maintain the individual driveway culverts. It's to prevent the landowner from filling them. Because if that natural swale is obstructed, then it will change the drainage pattern and then force the water to go elsewhere. So we're going to make it a requirement that language is in the deed that those natural drainage areas are unobstructed, and that the developer has to install those culverts as part of the road. Not just road and drainage, but they actually, for 9, 10, 11, those culverts have to be installed.
So the pond, the infiltration pond that you're gonna build behind 12,
Yes.
is that just gonna be an open swale?
There's a treatment swale that leads to it, and then the pond itself has enough storage for the 25-year storm to then be metered out through a level spreader.
Is that also gonna be an easement that they can't go in and?
Yeah, and that will be town maintained. That is a town easement.
Okay.
And so that has to be designed for access down into it for future maintenance in a number of years.
So is that an easement line that goes right along that property?
The lot line between 11 and 12, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's probably better seen if you, sorry for this
P1.
small, if you go back to P1 or perhaps even our sheet 5 of 14, which is just preceding P1. You see some line types for an easement around that. And then those will be collected in a set of legal documents that gets conveyed to the town, similarly with the right-of-way. So, and all of that has to pass muster with Kyle Fox and his engineering DPW department, as well as community development.
Now, these are private lots, not an association, right?
The individual lots are private. The open space still may have an association, depending on what the ultimate outcome is.
Oh, I'm saying this is gonna be a town road,
Yes.
so it's gonna be subject to whatever ice melt and work that we do on it.
Yes.
But in the deeds, there could be wording about the individual homeowners in their care.
Sure, they could. We haven't talked anything that specific with the planning board yet. We have gone before them, I believe it was twice. Once with very preliminary concept to share the approach and the idea in a similar fashion as we did with your group. And then more recently, we talked about if we did a combination easement and open space lot to achieve the 50%, as we were trying to keep a minimum threshold on these lots of 1 acre, largely due to the fact that we are having individual septics on each lot. But the subdivision as a whole could have further restrictions, not just for road maintenance, but individual lot use. We've talked about that in the past on other projects with you, and the problem generally becomes an enforcement issue. How do you enforce that? And if I'm not mistaken, I think the planning board, and I'm not 100% sure, I think the planning board had some difficulty, although I think it might have been a written recommendation from the Conservation Commission. I think the planning board sort of struggled with, well, how can we request that to be on the plan or in the deeds if there's no way to enforce it? No offense to you, and all, all good intention of thinking of it and considering it. And if you want to write that down as one of your recommendations, I'll bring it to the board again and say, once again, here we are at this topic again, and does it matter to me as a consultant or to my clients as a developer if that's in there? Not really. And will it get carried through into the deed? Well, it should, because it's a condition of the plan, but will it? I can't guarantee. And then if somebody decides to do something, is there an enforcement? So, however well-intentioned, I don't know that it actually can get followed through. But if you'd like to add that in a condition of recommendation, I'll bring that forward. All right. So as far as the wetland permit goes, again, I think it's a very reasonable location to cross. I think the 3,300 square foot is probably at the, I looked at the lines of how our wetland scientist drew the impacts, and
It's about the smallest.
it's not quite the smallest, narrowest, but that's done on purpose. We could have probably had it maybe in the 2,700 square foot or 26, but when you take a look at that difference in square footage and you realize where the impact is and why, it's all about gaining the separation here. We could have tried to, say, balance out the width of open space on each side and push this crossing slightly lower, but the environmental impact or the benefits of having it slightly a larger footprint of impact versus smaller but closer to the river, I'm sorry, but I heavily weighed into the fact that you keep it as far away from the river as possible, because that you're doing the best design and most logical, higher value area. So because the wetlands permit is technically not filed, I can leave my preliminary copy with you, and I'm hopeful we're talking a day or two or days rather than weeks before we get that back, filed through the clerk's office in a proper way.
Is there anything that could happen in the next couple of days that would change the copy that you have there?
I don't foresee so. The questions were more in the direction of if they, being the state, and this is Fish and Game who oversees this aspect of the endangered species or threatened species. My sense is they're only thinking about, is there enough protection in the open space? Is the open space of high enough quality, and is there enough protection on the open space for them to feel that the location of the project relative to the previous hits, like I said, that they have in these surrounding areas, I mean, they're not even adjacent parcels. I mean, I understand how they do it, but and the sightings are, date back certainly, 7, 8 years ago, and it could be just a single occurrence. So ultimately, I think we can show the quality of the open space, the level of protection. If nothing additional happens, it's all adequate for the purpose of this wetlands permit. However, once again, we're very open to conveying either an easement to the town or possibly the open space and fee. So I guess if there's a order of things for you to consider, it's 1, we're subject to the aquifer protection zone. 2, we may request or seek your acceptance of some sort of oversight of the open space if the planning board would like us to go that route. And 3, the wetlands permit as far as the impact for the overall project. So there's technically, I think, 3 items for you to consider. And I'm happy to sit around, and if you have questions, go over things with you. If you'd like to talk about it on your own, if there's any way that you could share your thoughts ahead of our next Tuesday planning board meeting on the 23rd. I would greatly appreciate it. Certainly, if you have any questions you'd like to forward through Matt to my office, I'm happy to email, and then you could distribute it to the other members if that's also something you could do. That'd be fine with me.
Is there a minimum size, when you do a cluster development, is there a minimum size that each lot and the overall property has to be?
Not in the lot. I mean, quite frankly, I've seen clusters with lots as low as, if you can believe it, 8,500, 9,000 square feet. That's less than a quarter of an acre.
Yeah.
Now, in this particular case, once again, because we don't have public sewer, and this is a cluster with MVD water, but individual septic systems, from a state lot sizing standpoint, which is based on soils, and the soil's ability to absorb effluent from a leach field, we probably could have been down in the 32,000, 3/4 of an acre, say, area, but from a marketability and sales standpoint, when you're, some people think this is the country here, if you get below an acre, then, it's not as, it doesn't sound as nice. And the intent is met with greater than 50% open space, so it's a good balance point.
So if this property's managed by MCC or versus being gifted to the MCC in whole, does that change the fact that open space now is no longer part of that development?
Not that I'm aware of, no. It's just it's as long as the open space is protected to the level of the ordinance. Any protection above and beyond that is a bonus.
Okay.
So as long as, let's just say, if it was gifted to the town in fee and then put under your jurisdiction to oversee it, you couldn't do something that went against the subdivision regulations that had that base level of open space protection. Or if during the approval process, the planning board, certain other things were added, and then ultimately you oversaw it, you'd have to live with those two levels. But you can add your own level above and beyond that, if it was fee-owned. But there's at least that base minimum from the zoning ordinance. And I think at this point, if I'm not mistaken, I might have shared the Ireland property that has an easement that says no ball fields, athletic complexes, buildings, structures. I think it says no motorized vehicles, but it certainly was all passive recreation trails and things of that nature. It was it wasn't overly specific, but it was fairly thorough. And I would imagine that if this property is conveyed in fee to the town or has a conservation easement on it, that the same language would logically apply, and it would be managed collectively in that same oversight, as opposed to having something drastically different. You're walking through the woods, next thing you know, circumstances, it doesn't make any sense. I think that was worded fairly well in the Ireland deed, and I could email that if you'd like. I mean, there's at least 2 pages, the back 2 pages of the deed, which the deed might be, say, 3, 4, 5 pages. The back 2 pages speak to the nature of the use, what's allowed versus what's not. And I emailed that to DES today as one of my things that said, well, if we do something with the town, it might be similar language. So, quite frankly, I can just simply forward you that deed responding to state's questions in this regard. Once again, they were asking about endangered or threatened species and what are the circumstances of the subdivision that would give them the comfort level of moving forward with this. And I could just email that if that's okay, or do you want me to go through Tim?
You can send it to me.
Do you want to publicly give me your email address, or you want to write it down? You can write it down on the top of that. Anywhere.
Well, there's a town one you could use.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That probably would be more appropriate.
It's on the website anyways.
Yep.
I wasn't sure if, well, I guess you can, I'll have it there tomorrow morning by 10. So whomever wants to look at that, if it's not Tim, or if you have access, then fine.
You could actually send it to just the Conservation Commission.
That's what I'll do. But I'm just saying, it'll be there by 10 tomorrow.
And the planning board meeting is the 23rd of
23rd.
this month?
Yes, yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I see you've covered fertilizers.
We have,
Yeah.
at this point, a
That's-
fairly standard grouping of details and et cetera. So,
You actually used
You
low
mentioned
phosphate, slow release nitrogen.
and once again, it's hard for me to say, you know, as far as an enforcement situation, it's one thing for us to state certain things on the plan. You know, we as a design consultant have a certain amount of a certain window of influence, say, in what we do. It gets turned over during construction to maybe through our client, maybe not, and then once the road's constructed, you know, it goes over to individual house lot development, and so the chain gets further and further away, thinner, and so, you know, we have certainly no problem with adding these types of things into the erosion control, states certain fertilizers. However, I can't guarantee that every letter on this plan will be followed through to the T, so to speak.
We do appreciate you getting me on, it's definitely through here.
It sets the tone
Yep.
from the start, and however, you know, when I get calls to do survey work in individual lots, people have never seen the plan of the lot that they purchased, and certainly they would never see the notes. And that's of the recorded sheets, and these other sheets are not recorded. The engineering design sheets, those are on file here at the town. So people just simply don't see them. Nor would they know what they're looking for if they did. So.
I don't have anything else.
Okay, well, thanks for your time, and I greatly appreciate you working with me on the schedule here. Thanks for making sure you had some time to fit me in tonight instead of shutting down. That's a huge help to me, and I greatly appreciate it. So I will email my correspondence with DES on the endangered and threatened species and our overall open space. And if there's questions after that, please contact me. I'll do everything I can to answer questions or respond to inquiries in the hopes that there's some level of written correspondence for the planning board for the 23rd.
All right, thank you, Ken.
Thanks again, I appreciate it.
Just so you're aware, Ken, there were sightings last year on Horse Hill.
As recently as last year?
Documented by
Really?
Fish and Game. They actually came out and did it.
Oh, they did it themselves?
They did it
Okay.
themselves.
So they
just
made
you're
a
aware.
concerted effort to seek out, to verify previous sightings, I'd imagine?
Yeah,
Is that-
yeah. They
if-
didn't just do it on Horse Hill, they did it on a few other parcels in the general area.
Along those same lines, we're doing a beaver management study in the town, and
I saw that on the agenda.
Yeah, the contractor has made numerous comments to me of the fact that she's seeing them all over town.
Really?
Yeah.
The, Tim, for your, I didn't turn this
Right,
over to you.
That's fine, you didn't need to.
This was surprising when I did see this, the level of sightings.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
So, you know, certainly when they tag a site and we're in the vicinity, basically, you know, we're in a triangle, if you will. So it's not unreasonable for them to pause and say,
Right.
you know, let's take a second look and how are you protecting the open space? And this is not part of the presentation. We're off that.
Right.
But this is just for general.
Yeah, I
This
just wanted to
is
make
what
you
we
aware
get
that.
back as a request, and I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, the concentrated area, you know, part of the reason why there's so many pops there is they actually had testing
well,
Oh, yeah.
And
There-
tracking
there was
setup.
there was trapping, live trapping done and
it's
everything.
unusual for us to see a site that has these, multiple hits, overlapping circles and radiuses, and so I was, I was
Yeah.
like, that's pretty uncommon. So now that I find out it was a concerted effort
Concerted
to
effort.
verify what was out there.
Right.
Which is based on historic, repeated sightings anyways.
Repeated sightings. Okay, we've reported it to them a number of times, so they decided to go look.
Yeah,
So, yeah, just so you're aware.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again, I
Okay.
appreciate it.
So I didn't capture the end of that, but you're gonna summarize something that we can put to the planning board?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. I'm just looking for to-dos, and it's not my to-do.
All right, thanks again.
All right, good.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so we have no new business. Other business, discussion and communications, I just have a couple of little items. One reminder, November the 1st at Laconia is the annual meeting of the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions. I'll be asking you folks at our next meeting, October the 6th, whether you're interested in attending, so we can put people's names in, and we can cover the fee for that, and asking for approval for the cost.
Apparently it's going well because they just hired their second employee.
Yeah.
So is this like educational,
Lots of education
Yeah.
stuff. I highly recommend that you go,
Yeah.
okay? And
I'd
that
like
you
to go.
take the course. They offer one class multiple times during the day for new members of conservation commissions, and you'll get lots of great information, and you should sign up and take that
yeah,
class.
I probably will.
Usually it's been done up in Concord, but this year it's done up in Laconia, so it's a little bit further drive. But I found it very useful. Matt, you've actually taught at this before, or you
Yeah.
were going to, or whatever?
I did.
Yeah.
And they had so many. They initially asked me to do it again,
Mhm.
but they had so many people that wanted to appear and present that they gave me the option of not presenting, and I said, yes, I'd gladly not present.
Well,
So
if
that I
you did
could
it every
attend.
day, I mean, I went to the class on trail building and did a fabulous job. So, and people walked away, with lots of information. So, it might be worthwhile doing it every other year. Keep your interest up.
There's actually somebody else doing a similar
Yeah.
class, so I said, yeah, that's great. They got all I know. Maybe they can learn some more from somebody else.
So, if anyone from the public's interested in this, even though it's directed towards conservation commissions, you can go to their site, www.nhacc.org, and look it up. But it's a lot of great educational material that goes on there. So, plus there's some business that has to happen, annual business where there's elections and things like that happen. So, but that doesn't take more than an hour of the entire day. So, correspondence, got some more stuff. I haven't had a chance to look at it all. Information about tree farmers, I will look at it. If there's things that we need to act on, I will certainly let you all know. And then the cooperative extension, they're doing a timber harvesting systems on October the 4th as well as October the 18th. First one's in Canterbury and the second one's up in Washington. So, in case you're interested in timber harvesting systems, so. So that's what I have for correspondence, yeah,
See that one back of that one? No, can't put it there for a second.
so, again, I will agenda the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions meeting, so we can take care of that. That's all I have for correspondence. Anyone have anything else, any issues or anything else of concern? I did get a quick comment. A group is interested in talking to the Wildcat Falls people about helping them do some work out there. So I've directed them to Karen. So we might have some extra volunteers, so that'd be helpful. So, and that's it. Yep.
Just for your information, the school board and the town council will have a joint meeting on September the 29th. It's a Monday evening, and one of the topics of discussion will be Madeline Bennett Drive.
Ah,
But I don't think there's anything else on there about Greater Woods.
Okay.
So,
all right.
but there is some interest in, we have some curiosity about, this
Mhm.
commission has had some curiosity about that whole situation, so.
Right. Yeah, so they have been stockpiling material out on Gateway Trail to do the reconstruction or rehabilitation that we've already contracted. So the actual rehabilitation hasn't started yet, but I believe that's going to.
Do we have a start date for that?
They had projected end of September to do the actual work. They were hoping to do some brush hogging before school started.
Possibly tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. So I do know material's been stockpiled. They tried to get most of it in before school started, but I don't think they were completely successful. And I believe they've been working with Matt and the school district to coordinate all that activity through the gate.
Who from the Conservation Commission is heading that up?
So that still falls under Tom Lehman. Tom, I know, is in contact with Mike, but I've also gotten some updates from Mike as well. So, and I know you were part of that at one point.
Yeah, I was.
I don't know if Tom has been keeping you up to date or not.
Not recently.
Not recently, okay. All right. Yeah. So most recently, when they needed access, Mike got a hold of me and Matt Chevenel and coordinated, so.
I'm assuming my subcommittee tomorrow night are going to be interested on an update, so.
So as far as I know, the actual work is supposed to start this month.
Okay.
Or happen this month, not just start, because it shouldn't take more than a couple of days, so. That's the last I know. All right. Okay, minutes. I did not get a chance to review all the minutes all the way through. Honestly, I didn't even think we were gonna get to the minutes tonight. I figured the meeting was gonna go that long. So it was an easy out for me. Did anyone feel comfortable going through 'em?
I did read them, and I think a little caught up in what they said versus us, so I didn't really get into their close for spelling and such, but I thought they were pretty good as they were, so I had no issues with them. I don't know if anyone else feels comfortable voting on them, or if you want to wait.
How do you feel? Mike? Tom?
I didn't attend, so.
Right.
I didn't get through it all, but it's fine with me if it goes through.
I mean, I can-
If Gage read them.
I can agenda it for the next meeting as well. It's not that important, I don't think. All right, I'll do that. Table them to the next meeting?
Yes.
All right, consensus agrees? Okay. Public comment? Anyone from the public wish to speak? Commissioner comments? I was advocating in the back of the room, explaining to her how easy it is to be on the commission and look at plans, right? You didn't know you were getting sold, were you, did you? Oh, well. Mike, you got anything for us for tonight?
I don't.
Okay, Tom? Matt? Gage?
We had our meeting the other day, Learning to Live with Beaver meeting here at the Town Hall. We had about 20 people attend. Did a nice display from a couple folks from the Cooperative Extension, and our GZA contractor came in and made a display of some of the work they've been doing in town. It was very well received. We did a little quick field trip, and got a lot of great comments. A lot of people were very impressed, and one of the nice things is that the wildlife biologist that was here from New Hampshire Cooperative Extension would like to come back on his own and review some other things that he saw. He was up in Greater Woods and was really intrigued by a couple things, so we're going to potentially be looking at some other field trips.
Cool. Yeah, I had the opportunity to attend as well, and I was I was impressed. It's kind of cool watching the map that Tracy and our consultants have been putting together and seeing how that comes together. And there was a lot of interest from people in other towns as to what we were doing and how we were doing it. So maybe we'll be the model. So yeah, well, that was done very well. So I have no other comments, so I'm ready.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, moved by Tom, seconded by Matt. I think it was slightly quicker by a few milliseconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned at 9:27.
Can I keep this?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I'm not gonna complain.
We did get maps in kiosks at Greater Woods. But I didn't want to really talk about it here, since we didn't have the Greater Woods meeting yet and talk about it.